Welcome to the regular town council meeting in town of Cave Creek, Arizona, Monday, August 21st, 2023. Meeting is now called to order. Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Ockerton.
Here.
Councilmember Bunch.
Here.
Councilmember Alcalmed. Excuse me.
Here.
Councilmember McGuire.
Present.
Councilmember Rhodes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Royer. Here. Mayor Morris.
Present. The first, we'll reserve the Pledge of Allegiance until the main meeting starts. This morning, we'll have three different portions. We'll have an executive session. We'll have an audit committee session, and then we will have the regular general session.
Afternoon. You said morning.
I say morning. It is the afternoon in case.
Close enough. Somewhere this morning.
Let's see, that 3 minutes in and only one mistake. That's not bad.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's time to move into executive session. So I'm looking for a motion for executive session.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh my golly, it's the Jolly Roger.
We're now in executive session. Calling the regular town council meeting to order. Public announcements. I have none, but does anyone else have a public announcement they'd like to make?
I have just one, and that is, we've continued with the local. I can do it. We continued with the local landmarks over the past week and a half. And I appreciate each of the council people who were in attendance at those places. The businesses love that action. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Call to the public.
David Phelps.
Mayor and council. David Phelps here, town resident. I've got 3 requests for the town. I really was trying to work on giving 5 to 20 positive things per request, but in lieu of the 3-minute time restraint, I'm going to just give you the request, and that way hopefully I'll get to the third one. Request number 1, I'd again request that you stop spraying whatever the poison is to kill the weeds along Schoolhouse Road along my property. I've made this request 3 or 4 times over the years. And I thought for a while that somebody had actually taken it to heart and stopped doing that action, but it's back and I don't want it. And a request to have issues like the helicopter landing site have a public notice type hearing prior to the decision to construct. I don't think there's any point in doing a after the fact hearing on that issue, but I think it was a disservice to the town citizens to go build something and then say, let's celebrate, we got something done. I'm not in opposition to that landing site. I am in opposition to building it without really any public notice. You guys may have known, or part of you may know, but just to internally go do something like that. And the question is, where's the next landing site going to be? And another request would be to include the traded interest or the interest of affected parties when trading right-of-ways, like we had with the group that was here a couple of weeks ago, wherein years later they're invited to a meeting which there is really not much recourse to the fact that their interest was traded years ago, and that they should have publicly been or privately been contacted by the town and say, hey, we've got an idea, we've got an offer. What do you think? Come on down, let's talk about it. I realize the results might have been the same, but I think the acceptance of the results would be totally different. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps.
No additional.
Additional comments. Town manager report.
Mayor, members of council, I'd just like to take the opportunity to publicly thank the water utility customers who so diligently conserved water during our water emergency at the end of July. We certainly don't anticipate having those kinds of emergencies, and we are taking action to have the Phoenix interconnect so that we will have the redundancy and reliability so we can go about those repairs with no disruption of our water service. But they really came through, and it really was evident that everyone listened and did their fair share to save and conserve water at the time, and we really appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Sean and his staff for really working through in difficult conditions to conduct the repair and manage the system as well as could be expected during that emergency. Of course, the maintenance utility staff worked hard to do the repair, and we're working under extreme heat conditions, and that was difficult. But it really took a full team of the utility workers and public works, a whole group, to really pull this off and have it as smooth as possible under the circumstances. Our utility distribution staff were out monitoring Desert Hills manually while the intertie was temporarily closed. The water treatment staff had to closely monitor the water treatment at the plant. And we certainly appreciate the public works staff who were out there, who brought in the water for distribution and actually distributed the water to those 20 or 25 customers that are way up north there that were actually out of water. And we were fortunate that only that few number of people were out of water, and they delivered cases of water to them for drinking water for them and their animals. So I just wanted to make sure that we publicly thanked everyone for participating. It really was a team effort from the community and staff. So that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Action items for tonight on the consent agenda. Item 1 is approval of the June 20th, 2023 Town Council and Planning Commission joint work session minutes. Number 2 is approval of the July 17th, 2023 regular council meeting minutes. Number 3 is approval of 007 beer and wine bar liquor license for Happy Bee Meadery LLC as requested by Richard Robart, owner agent. Does anyone want one of those pulled off of the agenda, or are we happy with them?
I did have a question. Is the planning commission going to come back and tell us, we gave them some action items. Are they going to come back and tell us when they're going to have those action items completed?
Well, this is a consent agenda.
No, I understand that, but when we had the meeting, there were certain things that we said that they were going to do. Are they going to come back and tell us when they're going to deliver those products?
Well.
Mayor, I think I can clarify. My understanding from the minutes of the meeting are that the Development Services Director is taking the council and commission lists, putting that together with a timeline with the most critical, and bringing that back for review and discussion with the council at the next council meeting on September 18th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're back to the consent agenda. I hear no one wanting to remove something, so we're looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ernie. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The ayes have it. Consent agenda is approved. Next, under general agenda items, council discussion and approval to accept the proposal and authorize Wildan Financial Services to develop a Town of Cave Creek cost allocation plan, CAP, and conduct a user fee study for an amount up to $26,750 presented by the town manager.
I see a smile on the mayor's face.
It's taking
He's been
years.
asking for this for years. Mayor and members of council. The overall objective of this project is to create a well-documented, transparent cost of service analysis and updated schedule of fees for the town development-related services such as building permits, plan reviews, zoning fees, licenses, engineering fees, etc., that account for the true costs of providing these services, including an analytically developed and defensible methodology for applying overhead rates. The study does not include any development impact fees. And the town has never actually had this type of study done. So we reached out to other communities looking to see who had done that, and Wilden has done some recently in Arizona. And you're familiar with Wilden because Kevin Burnett worked on our utility rates and capacity fees. This is another office out of California. And Tony Thrasher is available on Zoom, that he'll be able to answer any questions if you have any. It's really critical for the town to ensure that its user fees for selected services reflect our current practices, account for true cost of providing services, incorporate provision of overhead rates and costs related to indirect support, and ensure maximum appropriate cost recovery so that the revenues generated by fees cover the cost of services to the greatest extent possible. It's not going to be necessarily 100%, but we want to cover whatever we can legally. In order to increase our fees, the town must conduct a study. It's required by Arizona state statutes. The proposed fees must be posted publicly for a period of time prior to town council adopting any new fees, just like we did for the utility rates and fees and capacity fees. Town staff and ultimately the council need a clear understanding of standards, service levels, and associated costs. So we are recommending that the council accept the proposal and authorize the expenditure of $26,750 to Wilden Financial Services to develop a Town of Cave Creek cost allocation plan and conduct a user fee study. What this includes is that they will develop a CAP model, and that we always refer to CAP as Central Arizona Project. In this case, it's Cave Creek Cost Allocation Plan. And there will be a model and methodology. So in the future, we'll be able to, every few years, use the model to update the fees. So we would keep them current and we won't be in the position we're in now. And then lastly, I just want to talk about Wilden. One of the reasons that we chose Wilden is that you have to justify what the cost is by figuring out how much staff time it takes to do each of these processes. And Wilden has a way to do that with the least impact on staff time to actually accomplish this and have a true study and, have valid rates. And that was our concern, is that, it takes a lot of staff. It could take a lot of staff time, and some other firms have spent hours and hours of, documenting tedious work, and there's many processes that we might do once a year or once every 10 years. So we need to come up with a system that we can estimate correctly. And Wilden was our choice because we had a meeting and we talked about all these issues, and we could get this done in roughly 6 months. So, and Tony's here. I don't know if you have anything to add, Tony, or if you just have questions for him, but I do want to mention, though, that this was not an allocated fund. The funds were not allocated in the finance department, but we would budget for the amount in the finance department, the 009 account. And then at the end of the year, we'll look at the overall cost where we are. And if the department is over, we'll just do like we've done in the past, where we'll do a budget transfer from other expenditure authorities, say in grants or something like that, and move that to cover it. But whatever the cost is, you're going to get this money back and then some before, the end of the year. We can get this done and start collecting the correct fees.
Sure, and I'll pipe in. So yeah, you've hit every kind of point of that. Hopefully you can all hear me, right?
Yes.
So thank you, City Manager. Really, the cost of the study itself can be recovered through the fees. But as you mentioned, the cost of the study does definitely pale in comparison, even if cities are doing these every few years. But for a city, sorry, I keep saying that, for a town that hasn't done this ever, then that typically indicates that you are likely to see more revenue opportunities out of it. Now, it is true, the pure goal of the study is to identify what the reasonable full cost is of providing services. Once you know what those full costs are, then it becomes a policy decision on where to set those fees. Now, if you're looking at large increases, we're likely to recommend staging in increases or having a plan for that, right? So that you can kind of manage that policy moving forward into the future. But throughout the process, we're going to work with staff on every step of it so that they have ownership of the materials, the models, and the inputs so that it can be updated as regular as you'd like to. Cost allocation plan, it is representing the central service support of the city, there's town, to the departments and funds of the town so that you know kind of exactly what overhead amount should go to those departments and funds. The whole idea being that if you have development or if you have specific cost recovery goals in mind, then you can target cost recovery through those goals. So if you want, say, developers to pay their fair share, then the idea is that you can then identify what their full cost is. And then in areas where you might have subsidy levels, typically say community services, parks and recreation, which always have subsidies, and we would never recommend there not to be some level of subsidy in those, then you can show what those subsidy levels are. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have about kind of the process, study, and interaction, the models, and anything else you might have.
Questions? I have a couple. My interest in this comes about with some particular operations at the town that I think have been extraordinarily costly in terms of staff time, which means that someone else's town is subsidizing that work. When we get a project in that runs over and takes a lot of staff time, that means the projects that aren't doing that are subsidizing that. And we want to be fair to everyone in this entire process. I also noticed that the city of Phoenix charges by the hour if someone is using excessive amount of time, given a certain amount under the fee. And then if it keeps continuing, and if everybody thinks, I can probably think of some projects in town we've had that have that issue, then they charge by the hour, just like you do in a repair shop. And my question here is, what about overhead, vacation time, training? Yet we have the direct hours applied to a particular action, but what about the overhead and the other costs of an employee?
So during the study, we calculate a fully burdened hourly rate, so that incorporating that indirect overhead through central services, as well as a productive hour count. So that's the amount of time they're actually working, as well as take into account that overtime, vacation, holiday pay, sick pay, as well as some level of administrative time. So we look at developing a productive hour total, so they're recovering their costs through their direct services. So I think 2,080 workable hours in the year down to something more typical of around 1,650 is a typical productive hour amount.
Okay, and what other towns have you worked for in Arizona that you've done this study for? Are there any?
Yeah, so we just recently wrapped up our second study for Paradise Valley. We've also worked in Fountain Valley, as well as done work with Glendale as well. That's the recent ones I could think of. Yeah, thank you.
I have a
Any-
question.
Jacob?
Carrie, why have we never done this type of a study?
I can't answer that. We just haven't done it. It's
We
it,
haven't had the time or
actually,
the budget.
well, yeah, a little of both, but more recently, when we were looking at that, we were going through the other utility fees and capacity fees and all of that and wanted to get that behind us. The old fashioned way of doing the study was extremely time consuming. And that's why we were pleased talking to Wilden, how they've managed to develop a process that has much less impact on staff time, coming up with tying everything to, I mean, it was literally timing every page you do for an engineer review or plan review, and clicking it, and what it was really kind of an archaic way of doing that. And they've, I don't know what you did, but you've been able to consolidate the process so it's not like that, because I've been through those and had to do it that way, where it was very time consuming and it was hard for staff to actually function and get work done. you were actually spending all your time ticking away at every page that you were reviewing or whatever.
Yeah, and I could speak to that a bit, right? So a time and motion survey where you have someone over your shoulder monitoring everything you do in a given year. The issue is that for every service that's being provided, it's going to change in how much time it takes for every application. So through development of a reasonable time estimate of the direct staff involved, as well as indirect staff being part of the overhead for that direct staff, you can get to a much more efficient way of calculating your fees and services and not overburden staff. So think of it as kind of a reasonable time estimate to represent each fee you have listed on your schedule. It's a lot easier to update as well. So when you have, say, policy changes or building code changes, things of that sort, then that can be built into those reasonable time estimates for direct staff, as opposed to having to go back through and re-engineer what everyone's kind of doing from the start. The type of methodology we use, I mentioned a few that we've done kind of recently in Arizona. I do these studies in California, Colorado, Texas, Florida, and a couple other states as well. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we do a couple dozen of these every year that I work on directly. So we kind of tried and true state by state, and we're able to kind of weed out things that work and things that don't work.
I have a bit of a hypothetical here
Mhm.
for our consultant. So in 2021, we approved a rate structure for our water
Mhm.
supplies from our customers. What if his analysis shows that what we calculated isn't covering our costs and he's recommending increasing those rates, but we have them in place for 4 years?
Yeah, so for the utility rates, we're not touching those. These are direct operational costs. So single time provided services by staff, it's just representing that operational cost. Utility rates, impact fees, those that are recovering other sorts of costs or other types of costs, they have their own restrictions, regulations, and so we're not going to touch those. Those have been done. You already have a plan for those ones.
I get it.
Yeah,
So it's
this is
all
building and
internal
building
operational
planning, town clerk functions
Got it.
for licensing and, business licensing and special permits and things like that, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I wish I could quote chapter and verse, but our general plan asks for this kind of accountability and accuracy. So this is great, I think.
Other questions? At this point, there's public comment on this.
We have no one wishing to.
So at this point, we're looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the proposal and authorize Wildan Financial Services to develop a Town of Cave Creek cost allocation plan, CAP, and conduct a user fee study for an amount up to $26,750.
Second.
Comments, Vice Mayor?
It sounds like it's a plan that has been long incoming, so it'll be a good thing.
Councilmember Rhodes.
It's timely. Needs to be done.
Others? Councilmember Bunch on the phone?
Oh, I'm here. I'm just waiting to vote.
Okay, this is a financial vote, so I have a roll call.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Councilmember Elkaman,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Councilmember Algerton,
Aye.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is presentation of the quarterly fire and emergency medical report presented by the Director of Community Risk Reduction. Welcome, Mr. Tobin.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. As was recognized, Chief Brian Tobin's with me again on the quarterly report. And we know you have a big agenda tonight, so we'll go through this kind of quickly for you. We do have a very short PowerPoint that kind of hits all the highlights of the last quarter. And just so that you're aware, again, this is our first full fiscal report. And I'll explain that a little more at the end, but this is the first full fiscal year that we've had with the fire. The initial startup was a half a year. Then we had the first full fiscal year from July 1st of last year to June 30th of this year. And this is the fourth quarter report in line with the town's schedule. So we'll go through the PowerPoint real quick here, if I can make this work correctly. There we go. First up is your calls. And as we usually do it, we have it by month, April, May, June, and we have it broke out by different types of calls, medical, fire, special services, and special operations. And you can see the totals there. Again, this is the running total up to year to date. And then underneath that is the training hours. As you know, we work with Daisy Mountain with our IGA, and they're required to conduct all the training and certifications of the firefighters. And so we track the training hours on the annual basis, and that's the chart underneath is all the training and the types of different training that they get, command training and engineer or driver's training and all that type of things. The next slide is a breakdown both of quarterly and of the fiscal year incidents. And these stay pretty consistent. We run at about 75% of our requests for service in town are a result of emergency medical calls. That's our number one call. We have had quite a few special operations calls this year, which is the trail rescues and gas leaks and that type of stuff. But still, the vast majority of our calls is emergency medical, and that is both quarterly and annually. And so I put both of those charts in the PowerPoint presentation for you. The fourth quarter noteworthy items that we put in here. Again, it's broke out by month, what happens in the different months. Again, the 1st of April, if you recall, probably the big event, which we talked about last time, was the bike week. It impacts the town. Worked very closely with the sheriff's department and Daisy Mountain and the marshal's office to handle that. And I thought it went very well again this year, in spite of the high number of motorcycles that we had in town. We did host we do it twice a year, our second community brush drop off for 2023 in this quarter. And that's been very, very popular with our residents. We've done 6 total events, and total tons, we've had 121 tons of materials dropped off to us. And we've had over 540 residents make trips to bring us that to reduce the fuel loads on their properties, which I think has had a tremendous impact and a tremendous positive impact on the town and what we've done with the wildland stuff for the last 2 years. So it's been very popular and very, very well received by the community. We did host the Desert Foothills Leadership Academy at the station. We'll see if we can do it next time, if we're rebuilding the station or not. That'll be a different discussion, but this is the 3rd time I believe we've done it. And I believe Chief Tobin was actually a student this time, weren't you?
Indeed.
So we taught him a little bit about fire service and some other stuff with the town. So, but that's going very well, and the Leadership Academy really enjoys coming and going over the safety day with us. In May, we increased the staffing for the brush truck, as you're well aware. That's been budgeted every year for the upcoming wildland season. We did approve an RFQ for fire station pre-construction, and we've been working with those folks, and I'll come back to you shortly with some additional numbers and additional contracts for that. We did have the opportunity to do some live fireground training at the Tumbleweed Hotel. When that demolition permit came up, we spoke with the owners, and that type of training is invaluable. We just don't get that type of training on existing structures. We didn't burn it. Okay, in case anybody's worried about that, we did not burn it, but we are able to put up ladders. We are able to do some ventilation. We are able to do some forcible entry. And so it's a tremendous opportunity that we got in May. And then I worked with the MCSO and the DPS helicopter pilots to evaluate emergency landing sites. We were getting complaints from the community about landing emergency helicopter landings throughout the community. And so we took it upon, if you want to talk to somebody about that, that's me. We took it upon ourselves to find out what our other options were. Started with the pilots, because in all honesty, the pilots are in charge of those aircraft. We can make recommendations, but if they decide to land or not land, it's up to them. As an example, we did have a rescue. They were probably the last one that occurred. They were asked to land if they wanted to land in the parking lot at Spur Cross. There were too many cars and too many obstacles, and the pilots did not do that, which is why we moved to landing on Spur Cross Road itself. But again, that's the pilot's final decision on that. So we met with them to look at other options and other what we could do with that. And then in June, we did complete the firehouse grant with the new UTV, and that money has been spent. It was given to us and it was spent, and that grant has been completed. We do have the UTV. We will be doing a event with Firehouse to thank them again for that. We haven't got that scheduled yet because it's been so warm, but we'll be doing that pretty quickly. Then we did establish the Town of Cave Creek Emergency Helicopter Landing Site for spur cross emergencies. Again, that didn't come to you first. That would be my fault, but in reality, the cost was all internal. We had the materials, we had the approvals from the helicopter pilots. We own the property. We met all FAA requirements prior to and doing the site. And it's turned out to work out very well for us. We're not impacting the residents of the community with emergency landings all throughout the community, especially for the preserve and the park up north. They can pick up and land and meet the Chief Tobin's medics and firefighters at that site without impacting anybody else. And prior to doing that, I did talk with the one resident up there and with the horse trail rides. And they both agreed that this was a good idea. So it did go in and was constructed by internal crews, and the crews did a great job. We did select FCI contractor constructors for our pre-construction services. And we will use them if we can come to an agreement on price. We will use them for the construction of the station. We did support the Walmart grand reopening, and that was a pretty warm day, which is why we decided to push off the firehouse event until it cools off just a little bit. That was a warm day. And then I'll let Chief Tobin talk a little bit about Daisy Mountain has been approved for additional grants from the state to initiate a local technical rescue and hazardous materials team. And Chief, if you want to speak about that.
Thank you, Jim, Mayor, and members of the council. Yes, Daisy Mountain is proud to announce that we received about $132,000 from the state Department of Homeland Security, which are federal dollars that channel through the state Homeland Security Department for their distribution. Let me explain to you a little bit where this money comes from. The Phoenix area is considered one of the cities in the United States that is covered under additional federal dollars for what's called the Urban Area Strategic Initiative. It's a separate set of dollars. It comes to only a select number of cities that are determined to be high-risk cities and high-risk places. Daisy Mountain had already been awarded and is now in a maintenance situation with the state for our hazmat team. That's also funded from state Homeland Security dollars that also came through UASI. We applied for an additional response need in this area, which is technical rescue training. And because we had already been a good partner with the state as in our hazardous materials team, and there was certainly a need, the state authorized $132,000 for Daisy Mountain to train, equip, and cover the backfill to send 12 of our members to technical rescue training. So they will then be on the same unit that provides the hazardous materials response. That's a component of the UASI grant, is what's called a rapid response team. So this would be a statewide resource. State dollars go to local communities to fund these types of resources that then can be used throughout the state for emergencies, whether they happen in the area or are called for by the state to respond outside of the area. Previous to this, there were 8 of those, 3 in Phoenix, 2 in Mesa, 1 in Tempe, 1 in Glendale. So we will now be an additional one in that system. UASI teams work very closely with our law enforcement partners. There's a law enforcement component to every rapid response team. We kind of go together. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office will be our partner in our rapid response team, which we've already had a lot of experience and great working relationships with our friends over at MCSO. So we're proud to announce that we will begin sending our folks through that training. We will begin acquiring the cash, CACHE, cash of equipment that comes to the unit to be put on the apparatus to respond to these types of incidents in the north part of the valley. I think we had previously reported to you that one of the Phoenix rapid response teams used to be at Station 72 on Cave Creek Road, just south of the Carefree Highway. They have relocated that unit closer into the core of city on Union Hills in the 17. So that did create an additional gap here for our response to technical rescue type, which would be mountain rescues, mine rescues, heavy types of structural collapse.
Water rescues?
Water rescues indeed, yes. So our members will be more trained than they were before the previous water rescue here in Cave Creek. Of course, we resolved that with our great equipment that we had, but we certainly would have additional expertise and equipment to handle that, yes. So we're proud of it. It's the reason we feel that we were awarded was because we're good partners with the state. We've shown our experience with managing the other grants on our hazmat components. Our members are highly trained and highly effective in what they do. So we're now a part of that system. So we just want to let you know, federal tax dollars coming through the state to your community that will serve.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, and as we have spoken before, this would be the third grant that Cave Creek's actually benefiting from on the fire side. The initial was from the Department of Highway, which got the initial signs for 2 years ago for the motorcycles. Then, of course, the firehouse grant, now this grant. And so we're going to continue pursuing those as a partnership as we go forward with the state and federal grants. So congratulations to Daisy Mountain and their groups for doing that. The next slide is just Mary, you keep asking for data and you want data. So what I put up here was 3 different ways to look at an annual response for the fire department. So the first one was the rural metro years that I got from them as I first got out here. They wouldn't give us any additional stuff after that, but I was able to get 1 full year from October 1st to September 30th. That's the number of calls and types of calls that they ran in Cave Creek. A lot of those were in the county areas surrounding Cave Creek, but they counted as Cave Creek calls. That's why that number is a little bit higher. And 173 times they responded out of Cave Creek to calls that were just in the adjoining areas. The first year for Cave Creek was a calendar year. Remember, we started on January 3rd and we did the first full year from January 3rd to December 31st of 22. That's a calendar year. And that was 630 total calls. And then 48 additional times our unit was dispatched to assist as part of the automatic aid system, which we've talked about quite a bit. So it was about twice a month. We went and assisted our other jurisdictions, Phoenix and Scottsdale and Daisy. And then the last report is, which is how you'll see them mostly from now on, is the fiscal year to line up with the town's fiscal year. And this most recent one was July 1st of 22 to June 30th of 23 of this year. And that's the number of calls, again, broken down by type, medical, fire service calls. And again, this time we went out a little bit more, 58 times we responded to assist our partners. But I didn't put on this, our partners came into us at least about 2.5 times more than what we went out. So that's when you see the monthly reports or the quarterly report, when you look at it, you'll see, a different number in there. I think the number was 1,600 times they came into us, 136 times a month. We had additional resources come to assist Cave Creek units. So it's about 3 times as many times coming in as going out. So that I know that's a question that a lot of people ask, or you get asked once in a while. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions about anything I spoke about tonight or anything that's been brought up. And that's our first full fiscal year report.
We had a meeting after the Lahaina issue. We had a little internal meeting. I'd asked some questions to staff, and
Yes.
one of the things that came out of that was you had a document that had the number of resources that would come in on the first call of a brush fire. And I thought it was absolutely stunning to see the amount of equipment. And I would, when the Ocotillo fire started, we had 1 truck with 3 people on it back in the old days. And would you just go over that, the amount of equipment and management and all the response to the first call for a brush fire in Cave Creek?
Yeah, and the chief can help me with this a little. I didn't bring that actual document with me tonight. I apologize. The first during fire season, which is why we staff up, you have your brush truck and you have your engine and you have your tankers and stuff. During the first call, if it comes out as a urban interface or a fire in a neighborhood or in a community, then instead of getting one truck and one brush truck, you're now getting, I think it's 3 engines and 2 brush trucks and 2 battalion chiefs or 2 separate command officers on the initial call, because it's identified as any community that's a wildland urban interface community, which we've talked about quite a bit before council here. And so that's dispatched immediately. And the goal is to get the resources there as fast as possible and handle it as fast as possible. And kind of a recent example of that wasn't in Cave Creek, but it was the Diamond Fire that just occurred off of Dynamite Road. That was a fire that started in Scottsdale, was an initial wildland urban interface fire. They had about 200 homes that were threatened on that one. But because of the resources they didn't lose any structures. They didn't lose anything like that. They lost about 1,800 acres, but that was about it. It was in the preserve area. And so you're going to get that response every summer when the fire season is high and the fire danger is high. And Chief, you can speak on that if you.
No, that's, I think Jim did a great job, and that's why when we came to this arrangement to work together for your fire and emergency medical services here in the town, it was so important for us to both agree that during a certain period of time, during this high brush fire season, wildland urban interface, that both of us staffs accordingly for our communities, including the town of Cave Creek, putting your brush truck in service. We do the same thing in other stations and throughout the Daisy Mountain Fire District. And it's for that reason that our experience throughout the years has shown that the quicker you can get there with the most amount of resources and people, that your chances of suppressing that fire are exponentially in your favor. So during this period of time, the whole town of Cave Creek and our automatic aid system and our dispatch system is considered wildland urban interface, the entire town. So any call that's pinpointed in here automatically gets that level of dispatch. You wouldn't get the same level of dispatch if you're at 16th Street and Thomas as you do when you're in the town of Cave Creek, or if you're in New River, or if you're in Desert Hills. So we send more resources. We both put more people on our resources during that same period of time. And the intent, again, is to just get there as quick as we can with the right amount of resources and the right amount of manpower to make sure that whatever incident we have gets contained quickly.
And I've had a lot of people ask, they say, why is that so important? Well, again, we go back to the basic environment. We are a desert. We will have a fire season every single year. What we can do up front or ahead of it helps dramatically to the responders and to the residents. And so we just got to plan for it. We've done that. We put a lot in place to make sure that that happens as best we can here in Cave Creek. There's always more work that can be done, but I think we've been pretty successful over the last couple of years.
Other questions?
Yes. Events at Spur Cross, where unfortunately I think we've lost 2 people who died up at Spur Cross, show the importance of the helipad landing at that particular site. It's not near homes, but it seems to be near where it's indeed needed. How is the response to and the use of helipad or use of helicopters on the west side of Cave Creek?
The west side, so far that I know, they've landed in the streets. And it's important to understand that an emergency helicopter landing and takeoff for medical response is not controlled by the FAA. It's not controlled by anybody except for the local fire service and the local pilots. They can land wherever they want and wherever it makes the most sense. And so what we try to do was get them a consistent spot with Spur Cross, just because of the number of times we've gone out there. But on the west side, we don't have an identified helicopter landing spot yet, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to take a look at that in the future, work with the parks, which we worked with RJ and those folks ahead of time to make sure that they understood it. But we might be doing something on the west side. They're talking about expanding. I just had a meeting a little bit last month. They're talking about expanding their trail system and trail heads. And so that might be an opportunity to identify a spot. It makes it a whole lot easier on the helicopters and the responding crews if everybody knows where they're going. It's similar to what they've done with Phoenix and Echo Mountain and Camelback. Phoenix Fire and their pilots put landing spots at certain spots around the mountains down there in the middle of Paradise Valley, just for that very reason, as opposed to what is the best spot to pick up somebody or makes it most effective. So it's similar to what they did, and we talked to them ahead of time also.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, Councilman McGuire, I can further go into that if Jim doesn't mind.
No.
So Daisy Mountain Fire District has a fire station at Seventh Street and Circle Mountain. That fire station has a large lot. So we are able to land helicopters at that location. So even though we had some incidents in Spur Cross, both before and after, I would say, the landing pad in Spur Cross, some of our rescuers were picked up and moved from that location. So once you have a helicopter flying in the air, your landing zone really is relative to where the emergency takes place, because they're flying in the air and it takes minutes to get to where they're going. So it's a combination of what we needed in the Spur Cross area, because we have to lift people from this location, and there's another possibility to use the location over at 7th Street and Circle Mountain. So that's all dependent, as Jim said, on pilots, the type of incident that we're operating on, how many people we're moving. All of those things are all incident dependent. But I
Thank
would
you.
say that you would want a landing pad in Spur Cross.
Yeah.
Versus one at 7th Street and Circle Mountain. We're flying over those mountains to help a hiker, but we have both accesses on both sides. Is that helpful?
It is indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I had an experience of being with a hike on Spur Cross, and poor fellow had a heart attack and the helicopter had to come in. It was difficult for them to land, but indeed they did. And they got that individual into the helicopter very quickly. But our experience with Spur Cross is there have been a number of emergencies, and people going out in the summer and not prepared for the effects of heat.
Yeah. And again, hats off to Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, who generally, in most cases, is the helicopter of that responds first, because this is their response area. They have highly trained, highly skilled pilots to do a lot of things. Sometimes they bring those people to us, right? Because they get here faster and they're flying closer. So we try and find out what the best place for them to land is to get to the rescuers and the ambulances. And that's all worked out with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and their pilots.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Mayor, if I may, I just want to tell Chief Tobin that I'm just thrilled with the partnership that Cave Creek has with Daisy Mountain. I've never, since our job is health, safety, and welfare, I don't believe it could be any better than what we've got now.
So I certainly echo that sentiment. I think it's been wonderful.
Mayor and council, thank you. And I'll be here
Okay.
unless there's other questions.
Well, we have public comment, and you may want to
Sure.
say there just a moment, public comment on this.
I have no speakers.
We have none. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, and good job.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize for interrupting, but the town marshal is out unexpectedly today and this week because he has COVID. And on another public safety issue, I believe he was going to introduce the gentleman from MCSO. I'm not quite sure. Were you going to speak or introduce? He mentioned something about MCSO coming and I didn't know what was it, but if you'd like to speak, can they just,
Sure.
since we're on public safety,
Sure,
at least
right.
introduce themselves?
Public safety.
I feel bad. They're just sitting and
You're open to sit there at the table if you'd like. So I guess first I'd like to know your names and.
Sure, I'm Captain Tim Palmer. This one.
Okay.
Here you go. Captain Tim Palmer, I'm the district commander for District 4 here in Cave Creek.
That's us?
Yes,
You're new.
I am.
Okay.
I am. I actually took over the district in early July of this year. Unfortunately, I've been transferred effective Monday.
Hello and goodbye. This is-
The good thing is I'm going back to aviation, so a lot of what you were discussing earlier, I'm very familiar with. To my left is Lieutenant Jesus Hedges. And he's been here for a significant amount of time. He's very familiar with the district and the demands of that are involved with this particular post. The new captain will be coming will be Dave Letourneau. And his first day will be the 28th. So Dave has worked out here before, so he's not unfamiliar with work in this area. And I'm sure you'll find him very pleasant.
Thank you. We wish you the best in your new job. I guess you did your old job real well too to get promoted that fast.
Well, we wanted to make sure there wasn't any command vacancies at the quick departure of the previous captain, Brandmark. And so that's why I was asked to come over here and fill in the meantime. So, and it's been very enjoyable. Thank you.
Lieutenant, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to take this moment and thank you all for serving and introduce myself. Everyone knows me as Lieutenant Jesus Hedges, but I'll be cordial and then tell you what my actual nickname is and what everybody actually knows me as is Chewy.
Oh,
Okay, so if you ever ask for Lieutenant Hedges, nobody will know who you're talking about. But if you ask for Chewy, everyone knows exactly who it is. I've been here at the district for quite a while now. I'm one of the last remaining, as you know, Lieutenant Baraños and Captain Brandemar recently retired and have continued on to separate careers. And I'm sure that they were just as sad to leave Cave Creek as I know Lieutenant Baraños spent a lot of time serving the District 4 area. So on his behalf, send you all a good thank you because I know he has very fond memories of that. But here I am, like anything else. I can't guarantee you how long I'll be here. While I am
getting that
here-
impression, yes.
But while I am here, I will provide the best I can and answer any questions that come about from the council and mayor and anybody else, any members of the town of Cave Creek.
Thank you. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Glad you're both here. Glad you're moving up in your career and wish you the very best.
Thank you, Mayor, council members.
If they have any questions or they'd like to,
No.
I see none. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, I was trying to unmute, but I couldn't get my thumb on there quick enough. Yeah, the air group from MCSO is just absolutely stellar. One night, some ding dong drove a pickup truck into a wash, and Adam Stein and I contacted them, and they came with a helicopter and picked this idiot off the roof of his pickup truck in the moving water. And it's impressive how, and it was pitch black, middle of the night, raining like crazy. It was a monsoon storm. These guys are, their performance is just beyond description. And thanks a lot, guys, that's all I had to say.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And Mayor, from the management, staff's perspective, Chewy's been a longtime partner and we know Dave Letourneau well. And so we're looking forward to working with him again. So. It's good.
The next item on the agenda is council discussion and approval to appoint 3 members of the town council to compromise the conduct review board for the town of Cave Creek. Comprise the conduct review board. It makes a big difference.
Yes.
Comprise the conduct review board for the town of Cave Creek and to establish the selection process. Presented by the town clerk. Are you going to speak? Oh, okay. Well, this is something that I'll give a little, it's in the motion. The motion's awfully long. The town has a conduct review policy, which requires that we have a 3-person town council conduct review board to investigate issues in town. If there's a problem with any issue with regard to conduct, we do have a policy on how we treat each other and how people are treated and compliance with the laws that we have. We've never staffed that. And so this is an attempt to staff that board so that there are always 3 people from town council available on that board. The proposal that we worked with the staff and coming up with was where we would have 3 town council members serve 1 year, and then the other 3 town council members serve the other year. So that we have it covered the full 2-year term, and then that would just rotate as time went on. Given the town's history with cards and games of chance to fill important positions, and I'm just a second, I'm going to give the council member to my left an opportunity to describe his interface with that. What we propose here is tonight having a deck of cards and having each town council member draw a card to see which of those two phases they would serve under. If one person could not serve, then the mayor would fill in, but otherwise it'd be just a conduct review board by council members. So I'm going to ask Tom McGuire to describe his previous experience. Some of you may not know, he hasn't been in town 10 or 15 years. So Tom.
This is embarrassing. In 2009, we had a tie score in an election. Actually, it was the second election. Rather than having a third election, we went to a procedure called draw by lot. And I've never been good at cards. And I made the front page of the New York Times as a loser. But it gave a certain amount of notoriety to Cave Creek. So Cave Creek benefited in that regard. Those cards are in the museum, and hopefully I'll do better tonight.
So I just open it to council first of all to ask if they understand the process and agree to have any comments on that process as a way to fill the board. Yeah, Councilmember Ogden.
Mr. Mayor or Carrie, with three people, if one talks to another, you've got an open meeting law violation. I don't know what a quorum would be with three people. Maybe it's two people. So I'm wondering, why would we not go with like five people? So you'd have a quorum with three. Or why you wouldn't use the full council with the person that's under discussion recusing themselves. But if you want a smaller subset out of familiarity with the open meeting law downtown, three people presents a problem if one speaks to another. And I'm not really sure what a quorum is with three people.
Two.
That's my thought. If it's two, then I think that the structure could be flawed if you're looking for objective analysis, especially in a small town.
I think your current policy requires three. And so that's where that ship is left. I mean, your current policy says three. Now, that may not be a wise decision. That's what we have. And you have a code that says this needs to be populated. This will populate your CR, the conduct review board. And if you raise some good points, you may want to change the conduct review policy to have it be your entire council. But I want to compliment you. Some of you have sent to me articles from Gilbert. By doing it this way and asking you to police yourself, it's much more, because honestly, the remedy here is small because the voters get to elect you. And there's very few sanctions that you can pose. But the way you can police up activity is you work among yourselves, and that's what this does. Gilbert has spent tens of thousands of dollars doing it more formally. This is an informal route to try to reach a good outcome. I think I told some of you, I was a town attorney and we had a censure action and I couldn't bring it because I had a conflict, and they hired an attorney. Her charges for the censure were more than my annual budget as a town attorney. And so this is a good solution. Now, maybe you want to change the number for the reasons you described, but you currently have three. And so now I think you just got to live with it.
I'm not sure I understand the point here.
Well, if you have three, then what he's saying is two could never talk. But the point is that three will always have to talk in public.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sims, the problem is that under open meeting, if one should even speak to another, it's a violation of.
That's why they're saying you would convene and meet either in open or have any.
I understand that.
No, but I mean, but right now you're stuck with three. And so.
Well, why would we be stuck with three, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sims? Why would we not postpone this until we can make that number different? What's the urgency with this evening?
Because I think you've got a code that says it's supposed to be done every year, as I recall. It's December, and we haven't done it.
Well, I'm still not sure what we're talking about. If three people are, if we appoint three people and they meet together and speak together among the three of them in an authorized meeting, how is there an open meeting violation?
No, there isn't. It has to be an authorized. That's his point. There would need to be an authorized meeting. That's his point.
Right, it'd be an authorized meeting. I mean,
it could be.
They're not doing this informally. This is a formal meeting.
Doesn't the problem present itself when you're dealing with a fourth council member? If you bring them into the conversation to get an explanation at that point, you have gone for.
Ernie, I'm not sure that would be deliberation. I'm not sure that would count as a deliberation if they inquire as the fact.
Okay.
What this, but wait, but they're already, Ernie, they're already having a meeting. And so I don't think it's a problem. If a fourth joins, he or she is joining a convened meeting of three and it has to be a fourth, that wouldn't be an open meeting law violation because it's already been agendized.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, then Mr. Sims, why would we not have the full council minus the person who's the subject of the?
You can easily do that, but that's not what you currently have. That's not the policy you've adopted.
So what you're saying is we don't have the ability tonight to make a change with the number because it's in
It's
code.
not agendized, but you do have the
Okay,
ability.
that too, of
you-
course,
But you
yeah.
do have the ability. I think I see where the mayor's saying is this wouldn't be untoward. The three of you would have to meet in an open meeting. And all it's saying is make sure you follow the open meeting law.
In matters of a conduct review on a 7-person panel, is there not some inherent concern with a subset of 3 people adjudicating fairly, openly, and with consequences that could impact the person being reviewed?
Well, two things. One, our manager, it could be, it isn't just you, it could be employees. But secondly, they make a recommendation to the full council. So the full count, this is just the first ability to look at it. Trying to learn from the Gilbert example, this would ask 3 of you in an open meeting to try to address this issue, to try to resolve it, rather than hiring an outside attorney to do all the interviews and spend billable time. And so this is just a way to in effect, ask you to police among yourselves. The reason I agree with the manager that it could apply to employees, but generally that's going to be handled by you, the manager, dealing with your employees. It's seldom going to come to this group. Yeah.
But so,
One last
so
question,
they don't have any adjudication authority. There is no authority in our code for the council review board. All they're going to do is determine the facts, report those to the facts, and perhaps a recommendation to council.
Yes.
Council is the only one who can make an action. So there's no adjudication aspect to this.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sims, does the 3-member group have the ability to go in executive session?
Yes.
Yeah, that's my concern. Because the council members could attend in the audience, but if there's an executive session capability for 3 people, it seems like a poor design. Even with it coming back to the full council for discussion and adjudication. I don't think it passes the smell test, quite frankly. With all due respect.
You can change it, but not tonight.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, you'd have to, if you don't like that, then we'd have to agendize it and you have to come up with an alternative conduct review policy because it's written in the conduct review policy.
Well, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sims, we've never had this panel appointed before this evening. Do we have no history of this? We do have a history. What happened to the former group? Okay, so every council does this again?
It's every year, after the first meeting in December, I believe. Or actually every year, I'm sorry, every new council election
Yes.
after the first meeting.
How
So
many
when
years is it, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sims, how many, and Teresa, how many years have we done this?
I'm
Not
only
long.
aware of one.
We've done
The,
it once.
yes,
I think it's just one.
the previous
I
council.
continue my
and this
concern
one.
about an executive session of 3 people as a subset of the council for what it. I mean, and I don't know what interest or discussion would be on this issue tonight, but. If there's any way to adjust the number at a future meeting. And hold this action this evening until the number can be adjusted in the code, it's just a suggestion.
Well, we'd have to decide, we have to make this into a motion. And then we'd have to have a motion to table.
No, I
If we decide
understand the
not to do
process,
that,
but I don't
so-
want to preclude what the intent of the full council is, so. I would not make a motion like that if that is not something that the council would want to support this evening. I mean, it makes sense to me personally, but I don't have a read of the council if they're willing to postpone this until a later time.
Well, let's have discussion of that in
Thank you,
next
Mr. Mayor.
council then, so we can. Well, we have. Let's just have a general discussion, and then at the end of that discussion, we need to make a motion. We need to second the motion, and then we need to either vote this up or down, and then we can make another motion to do something differently after that if we need to. Can we
There's two, since you're the one, I truly think you could say before making the motion, I would like to hear my colleagues. The other alternative would be move, get a second, and then have discussion. Those are your two options. Move on this one, get a second and discuss this, or alternatively, I'm hearing that some have concerns about this. You could say, I'd like to hear comments from my colleagues about whether or not this is the appropriate action to take and whether or not we should table it as opposed to a motion. Those are your two options.
Well, let's have a general discussion, and then at the end of that, we can have a motion tabled if someone wishes to table it.
Or to act on it.
And if that fails, then we move on to this motion here
Yes,
and
sir.
see if it passes. So with that, comments from council, discussion from council.
I have a question. So you draw 6 cards, right? For the 6.
Each one person
Person draws 1 card.
draws their own
I've
card,
got
right?
that. So the 3 people who have the high cards serve the first year, the 3 people who have the low cards, the second year,
Right.
correct? Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with the 3 being able to go into executive session. I do think that's not right. Anything they do should be done publicly, then take it to the council, and then the council go into executive session if that needs to be done. But I don't think that subcommittee should have the ability to go and do an executive session.
They don't have to. I mean, it's their call. I mean, and they'd have to justify it under the open meeting law to get legal advice. So I think it would be narrow, very narrowly drawn. It would be, maybe they would ask, was this they would, in that case, I would be advising them and I wouldn't be being adverse to one of you. I would just, this is the conduct, this is the outcome, you make a call. That's why we're on such thin ice here. And that's why Gilbert had such a significant problem with this expense. Because the minute you start challenging your colleagues, then we have all sorts of attorney-client issues, just for the reason you described. But I don't think they could go into e-session, but I think it would be very narrow. It would have to be only to get legal advice.
Yeah, I just think that's a risky thing, and then you put the town up to get sued. I think that if we can make it so that those 3 people cannot go into executive session, I think that's a smarter way of doing business.
Describe that. Describe what is the risk behind getting legal advice privately?
If, let's say, 2 people want to take some action, a third person doesn't, that third person, it comes out after the private, the e-session, that it wasn't unanimous coming up to the council. That gives that person an opportunity to come back and say, what you've done is created a star chamber. If you do everything in the open.
What's a star chamber?
A star chamber is where you predetermine a conclusion. It's very much how much like military tribunals do in wartime, where you're judge, jury, and executioner. And I understand there's a little bit of difference, but at the same time, I think that precluding people to go into executive session, or this three-person panel going into executive session, takes out the ability of somebody to try to sue the council.
Mr. Mayor, you're exactly right. The open meeting law would preclude those 3 people from going into e-session to make any decisions. You just said a minute ago, 1 believed the other 2 were wrong. That discussion would have to be in public. All that could occur in e-session is to get legal advice. There could be no deliberations as to the merits or demerits of the alleged misconduct. And so the open meeting law would bar them from doing exactly what you're concerned about.
Remember, the conduct review panel is just to investigate and then report to council. They have no ability to act, none.
Have they ever met before? Just out of curiosity, Mr. Mayor.
Not to my knowledge.
I don't think so.
I have to comment with regard to personnel issues. This is a difficult area. The individual may in fact not have made an infraction that merits the concern of the community. We may have done, any of us may have done something, and I would be very uncomfortable with the discussion of that incident if in fact the person were found to be innocent. It's putting the individual in front of the public with the accusation, and I think that's a very difficult thing. I think if we're talking about personnel issues, I think that, as would happen, I believe, with staff, it should be done initially in an executive session. And then if the two of those people feel that this is something that needs to be a general discussion, it would go there. If the people feel that it is not needed, a general discussion is not needed, I think that would be an option. Is that fair?
Oh, I think it's a good point. Yeah. They're all good points.
Think,
Other comments from council?
Well, it
Arguments?
sounds to me like there's confusion about what we're looking at here tonight. And there are opinions about better ways or different ways to do it. And I hear our attorney using words like thin ice, and we should be thoughtful about this.
No, what I was saying is the issue concerning e-session. I think we are on thin ice thinking that you can go into e-session and think you could have deliberations as to misconduct. You can only get legal advice. Using Councilmember Rhodes's example, if we have a dispute between 1 and 2, you would be on thin ice to do that in e-session. You'd have to do it in open session. All you could do in e-session is get legal advice. That's what I meant.
And Bill, none of this is written down or as part of procedures or any of that, right?
Well, you have a code of conduct, which
Yes.
requires this board of 3 people to meet.
Yeah.
And requires you to select them, which you've not done.
Yeah, this policy is generally what, 5, 6 years old, something like that. Yeah. Well, so if there are no other comments, we can, if someone wants to make a motion to table and reconsider this later, they can do that and get a second, we can vote on the tabling portion of that.
Mr. Mayor, for the sake of discussion, I'll be happy to do that. And I'm not, again, attempting to preclude the council's wishes on this issue, but microphone. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Apologies. What I had just said, but probably was not audible, was that the mayor offered an opportunity to make a motion. I'm going to take him up on his offer and make a motion, but not trying to preclude the council with a motion to table in the off chance that there might be an ability at a subsequent meeting to take action on this. But in fact, we would first have to have a discussion and a posted agenda item on the size of the conduct review committee. So the purpose of the delay would be to see if that could be adjusted at a future council meeting.
Okay, so put that motion to words that we can.
Okay, I motion we
down.
table item number 3 for this evening, for the purpose of having this rescheduled at a future meeting with some of the discussion we've covered here this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, and so at this point, there is a discussion on this motion only, not the previous policy, but just the motion to table to another meeting. And so I'd open that up for discussion at this time.
I guess my question would be, are we going to investigate the current code of conduct and potentially change the number, or are we coming up with an entirely different, more improved plan?
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, I'm proposing, my only concern is with the number, not with the process that the town's been doing for 4 or 5 years. And maybe I'm a party of one on this issue. It just seems that a subsample of 3 people out of 7 doesn't, even in e-session, even with the town attorney, depending on the conduct issue that's being reviewed, and so many issues are never reviewed, so it's kind of a concern on the number, but not the procedure that's been the town.
Do you have an idea what number would?
Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, 5 is what I'm
Oh.
suggesting. With 5, you'd have to have 3 for a quorum. And I think it offers the appearance of, Carrie, we're not doing personnel, town personnel with this group, are we? This is strictly for the council, as I understand it.
My Mayor, council member, my understanding is that this would only affect personnel when it would be, for example, just an example, if an elected official was going outside the boundaries, maybe not going through the town manager for something and was dealing directly with the staff in some inappropriate way. That's one example. That's one personnel might be involved.
But it also applies to all the boards, commissions, planning commission, advisory
Yes.
committees. It involves also involves them. Yeah. It's broad in its, in the scope that it takes into account. If I hear you right, you're unhappy let me just pose this. The idea behind 3 members was so that we wouldn't, they would investigate with a relatively small manageable number. If you go to 5, why not just go 7?
Mr. Mayor, I think
Well,
that
you-
makes actually good sense.
Well, you can't go to 7 because the individual who
Well, that
is
person would
being
recuse.
examined, right, would recuse.
Oh, yep.
So then there's a potential for a tie score, which
I
is,
think 5 is a good number. 7 would be better, but I think 5 is a good number. I agree on that. 3 is just not a good number.
Okay, other comments?
Yeah, let me chime in a little bit here. You know, since there's 7 of us to begin with, 3 is never going to be a quorum of the council. 3 of us can meet anywhere for drinks and discuss anything we want. As long as we're not breaking, you know, as long as we don't add a 4th or anybody reporting to a 4th. So I'm not sure that I'm seeing the issue here is, you know, the planning commission, all of the appointed people serve at our pleasure. So any 4 of us could decide to remove anyone at any time. I'm not sure, you know, I kind of see it because I've always been pretty leery or wary of the open meeting laws. As a matter of fact, I don't even open emails from any of you guys send out to me ever, just because I don't know who's seen it. I don't know that I see an issue here with the 3 from that standpoint.
Mr. Mayor, Ernie, the reason is the 3 are making a recommendation to council. And because they're a committee of council making a recommendation to council, their actions are subject to the open meeting law.
and therefore, how many would constitute a quorum?
Pardon?
Thereby, how many would constitute?
Two of them
would constitute a quorum?
Well, there's no quorum language in the open meeting, in the conduct review board, because there's no adjudication, there's no decision making. All they do is they come in and they say, this is what we recommend, and we all,
But the recommendation.
or this is what we found, and this is the way it might be handled. And then from that point on, the council as a group of 7, however, if there's a recusal, takes it from that point forward. So it's a fact finding. It's not, it has no action, no executive power to sanction or do anything.
But because they're making a recommendation, they're subject to the open meeting law.
Yes, that's, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, it's kind of like all the meals at the Wagon Wheel and other restaurants in town where we had 4 council people in attendance, some of whom, you know, and ordinarily one person would get up and leave the facility in order for there not to be a quorum problem. What Mr. Bunch just described, 3 people can get together and have a chat. I think that pretty much shows the problem and the challenge of a 3-person committee. So here they're a quorum, but here they're not. So with the 3 of us can have lunch, it's not a problem. But if the 3 of us draw cards and we're on the same panel, we have a problem. And I'm not suggesting any change in procedure. I'm suggesting a more transparent number of 5, not 3. But actually, I'm not proposing anything other than a tabling so we can look at this further.
Yeah, that's what we're really discussing is tabling. So let's get back to the motion to table. Is there any discussion on the, anybody else need information on the motion to table before we vote on it? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call on this. This is
Do
the
we have a
motion.
second?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, this is a motion to table item number 3, pending other information and possible changes to the conduct review policy. So with that,
And just for the record, there's no public comment.
oh.
No one wishing to speak.
Okay.
Councilmember McGuire,
No, I'm sorry. how do I vote in order to go along with?
If you want to
Present.
table, is that?
The
how you
table,
vote?
okay.
If we move forward with this, it's a
No,
no.
not to table.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Councilmember Augerton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcamo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Yeah,
Mayor
I'm
Morris.
voting no, so it fails, it passes with, the motion is tabled by a 5-2 vote. Yeah. Okay, so we will move on to the next item.
You know what the easy answer to this is, don't you? Let's not do anything questionable. We don't need it.
Okay, so council discussion approval of second reading of ordinance 2023-05, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending chapter 130 of title Roman numeral 13 entitled Noise of the town of Cave Creek Town Code, presented by the town attorney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I could ask you to turn to page 72 of your packet. This action grew out of the action you took when you approved the short-term rental ordinance. That was an ordinance that was allowed by statute that allowed you to control activity in residential districts. Some of you were concerned that you wanted to have similar tools that could be deployed in non-residential districts. That generally would be the nuisance code. The mayor and I, we discovered that there was in Title 13 of the state statute a disorderly conduct statute that does apply and would apply here. But you all desired that we strengthen your nuisance code. It formerly was called noise code, and to include two things. One, to incorporate the specific language that's in the short-term rental code, and that's what you'll find at the top of page 75. And also to incorporate the language of disorderly conduct out of the state criminal code, so that your constituents knew that you had powers under your town code, comparable powers under your town code that could regulate activity such as was regulated in the residential district. So that's the first thing it does that. Secondly, Councilman Rhodes was concerned that we actually had, and so there's three changes. One, change it from noise to nuisance. Generally, that until now, the entire section was almost all noise. Then add in language by reference to Title 13, disorderly conduct, but then include the language like you see on the top of page 75 that incorporates the language you already have applicable to residential districts, so it applies to commercial districts. That's one component, and the other component that Councilmember Rhodes pointed out is that it included activity that is already governed by statute about having it, in my layman's terms, having a good muffler. And so that's what you see on the top of page 74, because it's already covered by different statutes. It doesn't need to be covered here. So our recommendation is this will add to the short-term rental ordinance. It will allow you some tools to police activity in the commercial, in non-residential, generally commercial districts. And it removes language like for mufflers that's already covered elsewhere. I have no further, I recommend approval.
Questions?
No, this is exactly what you, this is, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, I'm asking, this is what we asked for,
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay.
Seeing no questions, I know Teresa's gonna get me if I don't look at my agenda here. This has any questions from council? Let me make sure that we don't have any. Ernie, questions? There is public comment on this.
no one we should.
I was trying to get it unmuted there. So basically, this is a redundancy of state law. Mr. Sims. What did I do? Mr. Sims,
Yes, sir.
this is a redundancy of the state law, pretty much.
You're right concerning the reference by, sorry. I'm glad the manager's here. Yes, the reference to Title 13 would be parallel. The only difference is we're adding a specific language into the town code.
All right. It gives MCSO an out if they don't want to do the state law then, because they don't do our town ordinances.
And then if we can get them long enough to stay in the district long enough to you'd say to them, no, you still have the duty to force Title 13.
Okay, all right.
We have, okay, all the questions are done. The public comment is done. So at this point, we're looking for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 02023-05, and ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending chapter 130 of title 13 entitled Noise, parens and parens of the town of Cave Creek Town Code, period.
Second.
Councilmember Rhodes, you had the motion, your comment for.
No, I think that this will preclude any future challenges because it makes everybody in the town responsible for the same way that we did with the short-term rentals. And I think this is a good add, and it treats everyone equally.
Councilman Dwyer, yes,
Short-term rentals has been a difficult issue, and I think moving forward on it will give citizens who have been exposed to poor behavior at a small number of short-term rentals some protection that they deserve.
other comments from council? Councilmember Bunch, the comment.
No, this is one of those things. I just feel like we're adding something we don't need to be doing, but go ahead with the vote, Mayor. I'm not sure what I'm doing.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
At this point, then we'll call for a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion.
Abstain?
Oops, roll call, please. Did I hear you say no? Councilmember Bunch?
I said abstain.
Roll call, please.
You still need a roll call, yeah.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Councilmember Algerton,
Aye.
Councilmember Alcama,
Aye.
Councilmember McGuire,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ray,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0-1, I guess. The one being the extension. 601, excuse me, 601. Item number 5 is council discussion approval of the cooperative purchasing agreement with B&F Contracting Incorporated to complete repairs to the town's wastewater collection system and authorize the mayor or designate to execute the necessary contract documents over a 2-year contract term for an amount up to $650,000. This better be good.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Actually, this has been good. The town entered into items 5 and 6 are sort of connected together, but I'm going to talk about them separately since they require separate actions also. But back in 2001, the town entered into a cooperative purchasing agreement to work with B&F Construction to do sewer repairs. At that time, we were just starting to really get back into looking at the town's collection system, and we were working actually on the collection system assessment. So we actually, during that process, we had about $400,000 worth of capacity over 2 years. That actually just recently ended, and we've used up all $400,000. I think we've done it very successfully. We've completed 4 large sewer repair projects. Andorra Hills wash sewer. There were several point repairs that got repaired. Miramonte Drive, there was an 8-inch sewer line that we were able to get repaired before 5-point repairs before they actually Public Works paved the area. Hohokam Alley, just south of Town Hall, there's a 6-inch line there. We repaired what was called the protruding tap, which prevented us from cleaning or inspecting the line and installed a new manhole. And then we recently completed some repairs on Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway and 52nd Street of some 8-inch sewer lines where ductile iron pipes had been installed, but the coatings were starting to deteriorate to the point that we needed to get in and reline those. So we did that all with B&F Construction through the cooperative purchase agreement. What that means is they actually went through a selection process. At the time, we were using a contract that the city of Peoria had done for job order contracting for sewer repairs. What we're looking at, that contract is due up for renewal, but there's an existing City of Scottsdale contract that B&F Construction has. We're looking to what we refer to as piggyback on that Scottsdale contract. We think the contracts are job order contracting. So what that means is that we can work with the contractor to develop the scope of work, BNF Construction has been a good partner for the town. They actually are a full-fledged construction firm that has all the things, including bypass pumping. We've used them before when we had issues with the Rancho Miniano lift station. They were actually one of the firms that brought in the bypass pumping to allow us to deal with overflows of that situation at that site. And so as I put in the staff report, we've identified through the collection system assessment program, we have several large repairs identified in the next couple of years we're trying to get done. So we have a couple funded this year and identified in this year's capital program. We're actually going to refund another project for next year that we wanted to get done. We wanted to actually get the 12-inch sewer line on Rancho Miniano Boulevard done this year. But then we realized as we were scoping that project out that we actually have to repair a culvert. The ductile iron pipe that we need to repair that actually is both deteriorated and has sunk is actually underneath a large 3-barrel pipe culvert. So we actually have to replace the head wall. So it's a more expensive project than we anticipated. So we'll bring that forward and properly fund that next year's capital program. So we can actually do that next year within the scope. Right now, we have a project in Stagecoach Village that we're trying to get done where we have found some misaligned joints in Stagecoach Village, and we actually want to install a few manholes. We can better manage that or inspect and maintain that sewer line. And then we have another project that the next action is tying to is a sewer line crossing in Endores Hills Wash, which is the wash just north of Town Hall. And we have a 10-inch sewer line that crosses the wash just on the east side of Cave Creek Road. It was actually installed when Maricopa County constructed the culverts back in 1990. And it actually takes all the flow through the town core, the 2 to 8-inch sewers connecting together into a 12-inch or 10-inch line that crosses the wash before crossing Cave Creek Road. That line is heavily deteriorated and it's also settled. So we believe in that case, again, BNF Construction has helped us do some preliminary investigation out there. And we're going to be working in Maricopa County Flood Controls District's jurisdiction. It actually, the wash is a FEMA delineated wash. So we have to be careful what we do in that regards. But I think in total, the working relationship with BNF Construction has been very successful one for the town. That's why staff is looking to move forward with them. Sadly, every time we go into the collection system, we find more issues. The assessment program has identified several more. This isn't going to fix everything, but we do have some specific projects that we think we can get done with this project and with this capacity if council is so willing to grant us this authority. So with that, I can answer any questions.
It looks like we're using 2 different firms for working on the infrastructure for the sewer system. One firm for item number 5, a different firm for item number 6. Is there a reason that we don't have it done by a single firm?
Mayor, council member, actually, item 5 is with BNF Construction is the construction. Item 6 is design services and construction administration services, professional services associated just with the one sewer crossing repair that we need to get done.
Thank you.
So.
What are the consequences of not doing this? I know I expect they just open things up.
Mayor, no, yeah, we do. The town has some issues with our collection system. You know, our collection system dates back to the 1970s in some cases. This line was put in 1990 and it's deteriorated. If this specific line, the one line that we're trying to get done in the next few weeks, or next few months, actually, if it was to break, we could have a sewer overflow occurring into Endora Hills Wash, directly into the wash that we'd have to try and control. Again, the downstream line to this is the 12-inch line on Rancho Miniano Boulevard. Is that line were to break before we could get in to repair it, then we'd actually have a break in a side stream flow going into Endora Hills Wash again. So without the tools, which we believe working with these contractors through a cooperative purchase job order contracting mechanism is the best and most efficient way for the town to get these projects done. Otherwise, we'd have to go out and probably hire more consultants to design these instead of just working with the contractor and figure out what the best way to do it. It would slow the process down and probably add some more cost to it, I believe. But the real result is that, you know, our collection system will continue to deteriorate to the point that we'll have some failures.
So this really isn't discretionary.
Not in my mind.
That's what I'm looking for. Okay.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may,
Good, Ernie.
Yeah, so Sean, if we don't fix it and we have the worst case scenario you're talking about, then we get to deal with the Arizona Department of Environmental and end up with a bunch of fines anyway that we're gonna have to pay and won't have fixed anything. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we potentially some fines. We'd have to mitigate, there'd be large expenses for mitigating this in an emergency situation for having to do a sewer bypass around some of these locations. Obviously, trying to do that in an uncontrolled manner is in an emergency situation is not desirable.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep from breaking the law by maintaining. Okay, thank you.
Sean, so in your report, you itemized the 400,000 that we just approved, that we had approved, BNF contracting, which covered repair work on Andorra Hills 8-inch sewer main. But then this amount, the 650, is also allocating 180,000 for the 10-inch sewer in Andorra Hills Wash. So did our repair work, was that not necessary, or is this a replacement for that 8-inch line?
Mayor and council member, they're portions of the same sewer collection system. So what we did before with the Andorra, referred to as Andorra Hills Sewer Wash, when the town built improvement district number 2 to add collection system to the town core, there's one sewer on the north side of Cave Creek Road that takes the properties north of Cave Creek Road, and then they used Andorra Hills Wash. It's actually the southern leg of the sewer line. It follows the Andorra Hills Wash for a while, and then it pops back up to Cave Creek Road, and then it ends in front of the Mountainside Brew Pub. So we did several spot repairs along that line. We knew about this deficiency, but this deficiency in the 10-inch line was something that required a lot more work because we're actually in the wash. The other ones were more localized point repairs that they could work around. They didn't have to do bypasses largely. Because of the amount of flow going through this one, it's the same on the sewer collection system, but a different location than the other ones that we did.
I see. It's very important to fix the pipeline along Mountain View Pub and across the street, because it does have a stench at times. So I hope that this, eliminates that for the future.
Yeah, we actually, some of the miscellaneous sewer repairs we're going to be doing a repair in Stagecoach Village right in front of what is the new T-box construction site. There's actually 2 repairs and 2 manholes that we need to make in front of that one, which will help with the flows when I think it's Galloway Villages or the new apartment complex comes in and ties into that. But we actually have already been talking with BNF Construction about going up to the manhole where Sansui and by Mountain View Club and actually doing some investigation. We're not sure what's going on there. We think there's some issues with how it was constructed. So they're going to help us do some potholing to figure out what a solution would be.
Oh, very good.
To help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that on private property?
In Stagecoach Village,
Yeah.
Mayor? No, actually, everything outside the buildings is considered as part of a public utility easement.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's only inside the building. So our water lines go around the peripheral and then the sewer line bisects the building. So everything outside of the building envelopes themselves as a public sewer utility easement.
Should that, was that a construction error that should have been caught during construction?
The one clean out that we want to remove is for better access. I would have recommended they not put that as a clean out. We did find a repair that has failed. That was done during construction. And then the one building where T-box is tying into, they actually added a new lateral that wasn't even on the plans. We actually had to figure out where it was. And when they put that in, that's actually slipped down and caused a blockage in the situation. And then upstream of that, they should not have instead of doing clean outs to allow us to get in and clean inspect the sewer, they actually put joints side by side to realign the sewer before it got across Galloway Drive. So there's no way to access it for maintenance. So I'd say it's poor construction, and I'm not sure who inspected it. It doesn't show up on any of the as-bills. So.
That make you feel good?
Well, there's always a root cause to these.
Yeah, we're correcting a situation that shouldn't have been in the first place, and it's not on the original design. It wasn't put on the record drawings that we found of the infrastructure. We had to find it during our field investigation work. So.
Is there a significant part of this infrastructure that does not meet modern standards?
Mayor and council member of the collection system overall, it's in good shape. It just needs to be maintained, and we have had some failures. A lot of it's been poor compaction we're finding that allows the pipe to slip down, and some other things. That's the types of things we're finding. So yeah, some of the material choices when they used ductile iron pipe in some of the sewer systems, I understand they did that because of depths in some cases for the material, but the material lining is improper, and we're seeing failures of the liner itself. So that's why we did the what's called cured in place, cast in place linings down by Carefree Highway and Cape Creek Road. But in general, it's maintenance on a collection system that you have to be made.
Thank you.
Other
These are-
questions?
These are budgeted funds? These are budgeted funds?
Yes, right now, we're planning to use the funds that are actually identified in the capital improvement program. And then next year, we'll actually put in the larger project on Rancho Manana Boulevard, make sure that is properly funded in the capital program. So we can use some operational funds, but most of the monies for this year we want to use is going to come out of the capital program.
Any last comments from council? This has public comment.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion on this one.
Motion to approve a professional services contract with GHD Inc. to provide design, permitting, and am I on the right one?
That's item
Oh,
6.
Sorry, sorry. Motion to approve a cooperative purchase agreement with B&F Contracting Inc. to complete repairs to the town's wastewater collection system and authorize the mayor or designee to execute the necessary contract documents over a 2-year contract term for an amount up to $650,000.
Second.
You have the motion, your comment? you have
It
the-
sounds like mandatory maintenance, and I'm glad we're on top of it.
Should we not do this? We're in a whole lot of, okay, stop that.
Right, great.
We don't want to go there.
Other comments here? Councilmember Bunch, comment?
No, just something we need to do.
Yeah, I agree. Just in perspective, and I'm sure the audience wonders, it's just a repair, but the sewer runs at about a $2 million a year deficit that's partially covered by dedicated sales tax, and the money comes out of our general fund. That money could go to fixing roads or whatever, but instead it goes into keeping to maintaining the sewer system. We don't have enough customers on it. One of the key items for our strategic plan is how do we get out of that hole? Because there's $2 million a year there that's going to take capital to expand the sewer system to get enough customers so this sewer system is both affordable and we can take that subsidy and do something good with it rather than flushing it. We do have bonds that start to roll off in 2027 through 2030. And that'll help us out with some of this, but the sewer system is the biggest financial problem in town, has been since it was built, and it will be until we fix it. And unfortunately, it's expensive, it's long-term, it has a lot of public relations issues to it, and it's one of the things I really enjoy working on.
Yes.
So with that, this is financial. We'll have to have a roll call on this one.
Councilmember Algerton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcamo,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Item number 6, it passes 7-0. Item number 6 is council discussion approval of a professional services contract with GHD Incorporated to provide design, permitting, and construction support for the repair of a sewer line in Andor Hills Wash for an amount up to $47,660. Presented by the Utilities Director.
Mayor and Council, so this is adding on to the last item where the last item was to give us to work with B&F Construction, actually do physical work. The one repair that we've identified of the 10-inch sewer, and I think Brian's going to try and pull up the exhibit that shows in the backdrop. Here it is. So it's just north of us in Town Hall on the east side of Cave Creek Road. So the two sewer lines through the town core come together at this one point and crosses the wash. Because we are in FEMA delineated wash, we need to work with Maricopa County Flood Control because it's not just a lining repair job, because we've actually had some settlement occur in the wash. We thought it was best to engage professional services consultant to actually help us do the design, do the coordination with Maricopa County. Because of limited staff resources, they would actually also be providing the construction administration, so the oversight and working with the contractor. Typically, we've been able to work with our contractor, B&F Construction, to identify a scope of work and work directly with them. In this case, there's enough nuances to this project that staff feel a lot more comfortable, and because of the permitting required, that we believe we need a professional services consultant. GHD is the firm that actually recently completed the collection system assessment for the town. As part of that, when we did the original solicitation for that assessment, we left it open a little bit at the end to allow for an amendment to that contract to utilize the selected firm to help us do a design of some repairs. So this is at this point the only repair that we think we need a design for. Most of the other ones are smaller in nature, or we can work directly with the contractor to do it. But this one, we're asking to have GHD continue that scope of work. It's a separate contract itself from professional services contract. But we'll use GHD staff and their expertise in the area to help us complete this project, get this out of our inventory of problems for our collection system.
Questions from council? Councilmember Bunch, questions?
No, I see this, help us get through the permitting process is the key issue there, I think.
Okay, there is public comment on this.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve a professional services contract with GHD Incorporated period to provide design, permitting and construction support for the repair of a sewer line in Andorra Hills Wash in the amount up to $47,660, period.
Second.
This is one of those things where it's got to get fixed. So bite the bullet.
Councilmember Bunch.
What he said.
Okay. Other comments from council? Hearing none, this is financial, so roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Councilmember Elkama,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Councilmember Algerton,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Roy,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. We're on to the presentation of the quarterly utilities report. This is the cheapest thing you've done tonight, Sean.
Takes a lot of staff time though. Mayor and Council, I'd like to present you with the end of the year for fiscal year 2023 report from the Utilities Department. Couple of things I want to echo Manager Direct's comments at the beginning. Yeah, the utility staff, I think, acted very exceptionally during the recent event where we had an upset at the CAP booster station number 4. And I do want to thank all the our customers in both Cave Creek and Desert Hills who actually did help us during that period by reducing their water usage. So in effect, we lost power through 4 utility sites when a tree hit a power line, and the CAP 4 booster station was impacted because one of the pumps blew up. In effect, the motor starter blew up. So we had to go in and replace that, but we ran into issue after issue, and staff stuck with it during what was a time of horrendous heat. So again, thank everybody for that. And I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about next week. We're looking to have a workshop with council to discuss the integrated utility master plan. So that should scheduled for next Monday, the 28th at 5 p.m. It's going to be an open public meeting, so anybody who's listening today can also attend. So the integrated master plans, we're looking at all the town's utility systems. We're looking at all the issues that we need to address, both short, mid, and long term. And water resources is one of the biggest ones that we do have to address for the town, and potentials for shortages. And obviously we had just dealt with a physical emergency shortage situation, but the master plan is looking at what could happen in the future to the shortages if we have started seeing shortages in our CAP supplies. So I look forward to that. You should be seeing a package from us shortly, so you can look at that and see that information. There'll be a dialogue work session with council. So we're at a point where we want to give council some of our recommendations and make sure you concur with it before we move forward with wrapping up the report and then bringing it back for a final adoption. So let me start off by just talking about our overall water demands. This is actually the total to water demands of both Cave Creek Water and Desert Hills. So earlier this year, we actually had a large number of Carefree customers were converted. So you can see the red line is actually showing the demands this year. And we were trending down in March, April is actually when the large last conversion was done. And we had over close to 200 customers removed from the system, and we saw a dip in the demand. But because of the heat that started in May, you can see our demands have actually increased. And looking at that trend through July, because of the excessive heat this summer, we've actually more than made up that loss in customer base with our existing customers using water. So typically outdoor water use is what we've been seeing. So this is something we watch and look for. This is something that we feed into our master plans, because this comes down to how much water we need to provide to our customers. But you know, this long hot summer was exceptional from the standpoint that it did increase our water demand more so than we anticipated. So looking out, we'll have to look at things like conservation efforts and conservation outreach that we can do to help keep people aware of such situations. But if we continue to have long hot summers, it's something we have to watch out for. The stack graph is specifically, so the one before was actually dealing with all of our water resources, which right now is largely Central Arizona project water. But we actually do have over 200 acre feet of groundwater that we provide to customers in Desert Hills. This one actually removes the Desert Hills groundwater, just is talking about our deliveries of Central Arizona project water. The real takeaway is right now about 60% of our water is used in Cave Creek and the few remaining Carefree customers. Desert Hills is using about 27% of the water for CAP, and then about 12% is going to the Rancho Minana Golf Course. But that's not just direct water, raw water being delivered to the Rancho Minana Golf Course. It's actually also backwash water from the treatment plant. So when we have to treat water to make it potable, there is always a waste stream associated with that. So in our case, the waste stream goes to the Rancho Minana Golf Course for irrigation use. That is something that, and later we've talked about before, is we're trying to minimize that waste stream, but that's effectively where all our CAP treated water delivered to our customers went. We'd like to talk about revenue versus non-revenue water, and this goes back to some of the accounting that we have to do on an annualized basis to our Arizona Department of Water Resources, where they talk about our revenue versus non-revenue water. One thing, when we built this slide, we found out actually a little bit later, so I'll have to do an update later. As of February, the slide's actually incorrect, because when we built the new utility rates that were passed last year, the transfers of water to Desert Hills should be including a 5% treatment and transmission loss that didn't get factored into this equation. But really, we've been working on keeping down the non-revenue water number. The town is actually supposed to keep that number below 10%. You can see it's at 10.6% for this annualized fiscal year period. We actually work with ADWR and we report that on a calendar year basis. So if we factor in that the transfers to Desert Hills should actually be a little bit higher, it starts closing the gap between the green line, which is what we've billed. The green line, which is the treated water that came out of the treatment plant, and the stack graph, which is actually the water delivered to our customers. And in our case, the red is actually considered the tie-in meter, the meter that goes out at 24th Street and Cloud Road and ties the two water systems together. So they'll start to close that up and actually make our non-revenue water for Cave Creek Water Company look better. And the reciprocal of that, this is actually in Desert Hills, where typically we've been seeing really good numbers between our water delivered to our customers, our water delivered to the system, and our water delivered to our customers out there. Also, they have better metering out there, and the fact that they've done we did the conversion to the Neptune meters earlier. We were in the middle of that process, or early in that process in Cave Creek Water. But these gaps actually will widen a little bit, because the desert tie-in meter here, the green line, that actually should be a little bit higher. So instead of having a non-revenue water of under 5%, it should be increasing a little bit. It won't go as high as 10%, and it won't be a full add to it. But the goal of that was to try and account for the fact that in any treatment water treatment process, you have lost water, and it wasn't fair that the Cave Creek water system was taking all of that loss. So we were trying to, with the rate model, was to structure it such that that was being split proportionally based on the water use. So these two graphs don't reflect the proper numbers right now, but moving forward, they will. And we are looking better between the two water companies in that metric measure of what we call non-revenue water. This is the water treatment plant flows, and this graphic has stumped me for a while, and we're actually making some progress finally on this. The green line is the water that's measured at our meter at our Cap 1 booster near the Cap Canal. It's the water we move up to the treatment transmission. And we have a series of meters actually at the plant itself. So historically, we show that we are making more water than we deliver up the pipeline. We have a metering issue, and we've been trying to work to resolve that. We've added several meters at the treatment plant itself to help capture meters. We've added the most of all the meters to our SCADA system so we can trend it. But we've come to the conclusion that there's something wrong with that CAP meter. We actually are working with consultants to install a temporary meter. The pipe's buried at the Cap Canal. We're actually going to go up to the Cap 2 booster station where we have some exposed pipe work. And we're actually going to install a temporary meter and use that to test it against. The real solution is to go back to the Cap 1 booster station and put in a new meter, but that's going to require us dewatering the pipeline and probably take at the minimum 2 to 3 days worth of pipeline out of service. So that's something I truly don't want to do until we have the new Phoenix interconnect up and running so that we can actually cut into that pipeline and install the proper meter. Our goal with this new project is to truly quantify the issue we're having with that meter and then have that discussion with both CAP staff and then my understanding, they don't want us to use a meter that's 1.5 miles away from the Cap Canal, but maybe that's a discussion we could have. In our discussions with the master plan, we're not using that CAP meter. I know that has come up before that, are we under-reporting our meter? We actually our starting point is the water produced at the plant into the system. So this will have an impact on, the amount of water available for us to recharge. It has a little bit of ability to, or it'll change the cost of our water because we pay for both the capital costs on all our CAP water, but we only pay for the water delivered and it's measured as 1 meter. So we'll have to, our increased costs will go up, but the delivery portion of the cap water is not as significant as the capital costs. So it is something we do need to correct. And I've been working with staff to try and work on it. It's been frustrating because every time we seem to be getting better with it, and all of a sudden a couple of weeks later, something goes astray and we're finding out that something's going on with this metering and we're just continuing to work our way through it. So the next quarterly report, I hope to be able to come back with a good solution on what we need to do and where the problems are.
Do you expect, my expectation is that CAP's need for a meter would not put the plant water system in jeopardy of a major outage. Is there any, do you feel that is going to be the outcome?
So right now the meter is what's referred to as an insertion meter, and it inserts through the top of the pipe. Talking to the vendor, looking at the manufacturer's information, that's the worst orientation we could have that meter in right now in that location. So we either have to get it rotated to the side of the pipe or underneath the pipe at the minimum. And or what CAP would prefer that we do is actually replace that entire meter section and cut into the pipe, dewater the pipe and put in what's called a magnetic flow meter, which is going to require us to expose the pipe for about 7 to 10 feet, dig completely around it and cut into it and remove a section of pipe.
But the point is not what's wrong with the equipment. The point is
Yeah.
that CAP's insistence on a new meter putting the town water system into jeopardy.
They haven't insisted to the point that they're saying we need to do it. They want us to do it. And that's what we've been working with. So
And our position should be that we don't do that until Phoenix Interconnect is in, I would hope.
yeah, I'm going to actually go back and talk to the CAP maintenance and engineering staff about that. Once I get this other meter installed, I'd like to have that conversation with them. They haven't pushed it that far. We actually have some other improvements that they've requested that we make at the Cap 1 booster station too, but we've always made them aware that, the single point of failure at that booster station and the fact that if we do anything wrong, that we're out of water in the town, and they are hearing that from us. And I think I just need to keep them up abreast of what's happening with the interconnect project, because that is slightly slower scheduled than anticipated. We thought it was going to be online next year, but it'll be the following year that it comes online. So obviously makes us very nervous. Anything to do with that cat pipeline, especially out of the recent outage that we've had, every year I've been here, we've had an issue with the cat pipeline to the point where it's something I don't want to deal with anymore, but we do have a solution in hand with the interconnect site. It's not a permanent solution, but it will give us some breathing space. And it's going to be a huge improvement to the system overall reliability for the system and redundancy for the system. We talk about water losses, just in operating the system because of the long dead end nature and lack of looping of a lot of our system. We still have to do a lot of flushing to keep water age and water quality up in the system. So show this graph, and every quarter we have to up our flushing operations. Because of the hot summer, it actually transferred into the ground, and we actually did see a marked increase in the temperature of our water, which meant that we actually lost chlorine residual a lot faster too. So we had to do a lot more flushing. But in total, this flushing operation only represents about less than 1% of our total production. We do want to see if there's other ways we can do with it, get into some more directional flushing, as we've had some staffing challenges in this fall. We'd like to start working on some directional flushing. There's some other flushing techniques out there that are called that don't waste as much water. It's just running it down a wash. So we're looking into those, but they're costly, but it's something we can look at to see if we can scour our lines and hopefully keep a water quality better in the system. But overall, just the nature of the Cave Creek system, we're never going to get fully away from just having to move water in the lines, because the customers aren't moving enough because we don't have enough customers tied into all the lines. So moving over to the wastewater side, this is the wastewater ranch monthly flows that you're seeing here. The red line is the current fiscal year, and then you're seeing 22 is the blue, the yellow is 2021, and then 2020 is the green. You can see at the beginning of 2020, we refer to it as the COVID bump, that sort of everybody was staying home and not leaving. And there was actually a marked increase in our wastewater flows for a period of time when the first things hit, when COVID first started hitting and people did not leave actually for the summer. Right now, we're trending about the same. So the system is fairly stable. We're not adding very significantly to our customer usage. And we'll talk more about that in the master plan, because trying to get more customers into that system, there are some ways we can do that. And until we can add more customer base, it's going to be a fairly stable system, which is good in some cases, but not good overall for, helping make the system more efficient cost-wise. And then talking about Rancho Mañana Golf Course, which is our largest single water customer. I show this graphic every month. So the East Lake is where we have our 2 delivery pipelines. We have an 8-inch pipeline so all the effluent from the treatment plant, the only place that we can dispose of that effluent currently is into the lake system. And then we do backwash water and what we refer to as CAP divert water for the Paul membranes through another 8-inch line, or we could deliver raw CAP water up to the East Lake. The East Lake cascades into the Middle Lake, and then that cascades into the West Lake. West Lake is where Rancho Mañana has their irrigation booster station. And then there's also the overflow to the wash. So as mentioned before, there is a inefficiency in this system up there. And we've very diligently quantified it. We've actually had a meeting with Rancho Mañana. We're looking at some improvements that we can work with them on. On this graphic, I want to show the red line on here. This is a sort of stack graph of our deliveries to them. The blue is raw CAP water. So certain times of the year, we don't generate enough effluent or even enough backwash water from our treatment process to actually keep up with their demand. So we deliver them raw CAP water. The red line is actually the backwash water from the treatment plant. I wanted to highlight, you can notice from July of last year to June of this year, that red line is narrowed down. That's because the staff are actually been diligent and working on the Paul membrane process that we have actually is very efficient. And they've been working to try and optimize the use of the Paul membranes. The West Techs are a lot less efficient, but the staff have been working to try and balance that out to get both the best quality water into our system and reducing the amount of backwash water produced by that treatment plant. And the orange is at the bottom is actually the treated effluent. So that we have no control over right now. It comes into the plant, we treat it, and the only place we can deliver it to is actually Rancho Mañana Lakes. That leads to the imbalance for deliveries versus irrigation. So the blue on this graph is showing the total of the town's deliveries on a monthly basis versus what was billed for irrigation. So per contract, they get billed on what they use. And that's the orange on the graph. And you can see, so this is inverse of the calendar year. You can see the middle there, December, January, February, cooler winter months, they're not irrigating very much, but that's actually when our wastewater flows increase. So we produce the most effluent. We produce less backwash water, but that's when the waste goes up the most. So in total, we're seeing about 159 acre feet of water that we deliver to them that's not being used for irrigation. So that goes into what we refer to as losses, non-revenue water. Of that 159 acre feet this past calendar year, we were able to calculate about 36 acre feet is just evaporation off those ponds. We believe, or we meter the overflow. So 81 acre feet was actually overflowing the lakes. That's when we couldn't control the deliveries and we had nowhere else to put the either the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant or the backwash water. So it went to the lakes, they couldn't use it. So it overflows the lakes. And then we've been able to come up with an assumed liner losses. We do believe their liners are leaking, and about 42 acre feet is leaking just through the lakes themselves. So, the pond overflow is something the town needs to figure out a way to better manage that. And that's with master plan, we'll bring forward some suggestions for you. The pond evaporation, the best way to minimize that is to reduce the ponds. We've actually had that conversation with them, reduce the size of them. And the leakage through the liners is something that we've actually have approached the firm to maybe help them develop what a scope of work to replace those liners would look like. So there's costs involved in all of them. So, and we actually control a path of that loss of that system is actually because the town can't control our deliveries of water to the system right now. So something we've been talking about and you'll hear about next week with the integrated master plan. Talking about the backflow program, it's a program going well. We actually are working with our vendor. This is a quick little graphic to show. We've actually had great success with this program, and the program itself is doing great. This is the graphic that we get from BSI, it's the firm that we use. Yeah, there's not much to present except the fact that the program I think is doing well to protect the town's water system. The pre-treatment fog program, I've talked about this a number of times, and you're sure seeing a snapshot of the final product. So we're actually got we used to just use a tracking spreadsheet to manage this. We now actually have online program that's very efficient. The vendors, the suppliers who are doing the fats, oils, and grease removal can go right into the system, upload information, and have this dashboard type of situation where we can manage it a lot more efficiently, effectively. So we started the final outreach and starting to implement it. So again, it's another kudos to the staff resources, staff being very efficient and effective to try and better manage the program. We did the inventory. We found several devices, bless you, that weren't on the system that we've added to the system. We found some that we just added as old unused grease interceptors and stuff like that. So we've updating this program has taught us a lot about our collection system, and then we're now actually in a much better situation to do the regulatory compliance that's required. An update on the Carefree Disconnect project. So you're seeing the total of the 3 areas that are being disconnected from the water system. So as of right now, 526 of the 550 accounts have been separated from the system. In area A was where we actually saw the most disconnects happen this last quarter through the last half of the year. That's where we saw a reduction in our usage, but again, our customer base is actually made up for that with this long, hot summer. There's 3 accounts left in area A, and that's the Lowe's, what was the CVS, and the StoreQuest. So we're talking with Carefree about having those cutovers done here in the next couple of months. They've done most of the pipe work, and that's what probably people saw recently with the crossings across Cave Creek Road north of Carefree Highway. That was largely associated with the pipe work that Carefree was installing. The last area to be converted is a portion of area B. So C is fully converted. A will be in a few months will be fully converted, and B, they actually have to do a booster pump station upgrade. Because of delivery schedules, they're saying that it could take 6 to 9 months to complete that. So we have about 20 customers in area B that will continue to service and bill until they get converted over. But we're at the tail end of the project. But they're into some situations where they have to, Carefree has to do a booster station upgrade before they can complete all the work. Oh, sorry. Quick summary on water resources. Won't spend too much time on this, but this is trying to highlight, and there's a lot of numbers on this, but the real takeaway here is that we've been successful in taking the non-used portion of the town's Colorado River allocation and recharging it. So in this, for fiscal year 2023, we'll have a total of 1,148 acre feet of Colorado River water recharged in the CAP's Hieroglyphic Mountains Recharge Project. So a great kudos. So we're generating long-term storage credits. This past year, because of what's happening with the transfer of the water rights between us and Carefree, we had to pay to delivery because the subcontract amendment hasn't been done. So we've actually, since we paid for that water this year, we actually recharged it. So next year we won't have quite as much to recharge, but we are building that long-term storage credit. And with the master plan, we'll bring forward some ideas that, having that in the ground and having a storage account looks good, but how do you get that water back into a pipes is something we need to, that's the next step. And that's what we've been working on with the master plan. A couple of projects I just want to highlight is in May, we did some inspections and cleaning at the Rockaway, Neary, and the wastewater treatment plant Clearwell. So we brought in divers to do that work. Very successful. There wasn't that much debris in the two reservoirs in the system, but we actually did find a fair amount of debris that had collected in the Clearwell. We couldn't find any records the last time the Clearwell had actually been cleaned. The reservoirs, it looked like about 2015, but we're going to try and do this on a biannual basis at this point moving forward. So there's just a little bit of a layer on both the Rockaway and the Rockaway and Neary reservoirs. Couple of minor deficiencies that we can bring the divers back in to work on also with some of the piping internally. We've done some stuff like new digital radios. We've talked about our SCADA system. We've been running into issues because a couple of our sites still had a point-to-point radio system. The Neary site to the treatment plant, and also the Carroll Heights booster station to the treatment plant. So those have been upgraded to new cellular-based digital radios. And then we've actually had to bring on our Carriage 2 booster station. So that booster station was actually built by the developers 15 plus years ago for the town, and actually was never put into service after it was accepted. So over this past year, staff have been working at that site to rebuild it in effect, because everything had basically wore out just by sitting there and aging itself out. So we now have two customers. The first customer we've been using by bypassing the booster station, but they are there. And then the house right at the top of Carriage Drive that's being built right now is now being fed from this booster station as intended. It's an idea of some of the maintenance that we do. So this is an idea, we do have a maintenance supervisor and two staff members. So we bring in contractors when necessary, but we do a lot of work ourselves. And you can see the fan blade. So the motors themselves have fans to keep them cool. So we go in and proactively change these things out as things wear out to keep our motors running. So the distribution system. We still are continuing we've largely caught up with a lot of the masses of fails metered that we have in the collection system or the distribution system in Cave Creek that we've been seeing. And we're trying to work forward with, we still haven't received all the federal grant monies for the WaterSmart grant, but we're still proceeding with starting on the meter changeout program in that we're trying to get our contractors together. We're trying to get the collector systems put in place, and those will be the collectors that allow us to, when we get the new meters installed, we'll actually allow us to get real-time data into the system. So it's a double-edged sword. We have to get the collector set to figure out which meters that they can read and which ones we'll have to put a cellular antenna onto. So the vendors should in the next couple of months have a couple of those collector radios available that we can start setting them in the system and then start continuing on the change out program. And we're talking about different vendors that we can use because there are federal grant dollars involved. We have to make sure that we follow things like Davis-Bacon labor rates and the buy U.S. iron and steel requirements put forward with it. But we are still moving forward on the change out of the Cave Creek system to the Neptune meters, and then trying to also do the leapfrog to make it a automated meter system so that we can provide customers with real-time data for their usage. More slides. Major project we completed this last quarter was actually the interconnect site between Cave Creek and Desert Hills, and I forgot to bring the rock. It sits in the back of my desk here. The two water companies actually came together with 2 8-inch lines, but then they actually both sites narrowed down to 4-inch piping. And then that was where the metering was being done. We realized that we were seeing pretty large pressure swings in 24th Street, and we thought it might be attributed to the fact that the water's trying to push through that 4-inch piping. Well, we went in and did a project, and as you can see, when the contractor cut into the pipe, lo and behold, we actually cut into a rock that had wedged itself into that 4-inch line. So we were pushing 600 gallons a minute past that rock on an annual basis, on a daily basis. So by changing it out to 6-inch, and actually we now have a SCADA system, a mission system, so we can actually look at it. I can look at it on the phone right now and tell you what the pressure is going in and out of that site and the flows. We have a much better understanding, and this actually helped us really understand what the issues are going on with our Cloud Road pipeline, which was part of the old master plan. Is actually a project that was identified. Now we have a lot more things to quantify the issues with that pipeline, and it's really coming down to the amount of water. We're constantly pushing at least 300, if not 600 gallons a minute to Desert Hills right now, which means there's so much friction losses in that pipeline. If we actually stop the pipeline, we'll see a 30 to 40 pound pressure swing, because that's 30 to 40 pounds of pressure loss that we're seeing through friction loss by pushing that much water out to the east side or west side of the town to collect
Was
distribution.
this rock causing part of that pressure drop?
Surprisingly, when we took it out, the pressure drop was still happening upstream. I was expecting to see a huge difference, but
Maybe there's another rock up there.
it's in the 8-inch section of pipe, and I'm afraid to see how big that rock is. Yeah, that was quite an interesting night when we cut into that, and they're looking at, you got to see this, and it's like, oh no. But yeah, another big system
Was the
improvement.
rock moved to that point, or did you happen to cut in where the rock was?
They just had their chop saw, and that's actually what they chopped into. So the rock sitting in my office, it's actually cut where they hit the chop saw. So they were actually happened to just be cutting the piping apart and happened to hit it. So we might not have ever seen it if they had hit it at a different location.
There's more rocks in there.
Yeah. There's rocks up here, I know that, but
Don't blame the geology.
the other little improvement we did is wastewater treatment plant. So it seems like a small one, but there used to be metal halide lighting in the headworks building. So when you go in there and say an emergency situation, it would take up to 15 minutes for them to actually brighten up. We've changed those out to LEDs, so they're more efficient. They actually brighten up. So you can actually work in there a lot more safely, efficiently. So we'll be looking to change those out at other locations. We did some work in the last quarter actually to the Stagecoach lift station, where we actually had a failed flow meter at the site, and we actually had a failed check valve at the site where the water was basically recirculating. So we replaced the check valves. We installed a new flow meter. We installed a new bypass pump connection. So now we can bypass this site in an emergency. If the something catastrophic happens, we can actually bypass it, or if we need to work on the wet well itself. So another great improvement to the site. Mirrors very much what we did at Rancho Manana. So we had those two lift stations looking very close as far as operationally right now. And then the last one, collection system update. I mentioned this before. We actually did some sewer rehab. I was going to show some pictures of the liners, but there's not much to see. We actually took away the old deteriorated. We actually now have a plastic liner inside of it, so it looks like plastic pipe. So. I'm sorry if I ran along with this. There always seems to be a lot of stuff that my staff are working on. And again, next Monday, we do want to have an update to talk to council on the where we're at with the integrated master plan before we move ahead with that project and wrap that up. With that, I can answer any questions.
Questions from staff?
How do you keep up with it all?
Very good staff. So
There is public comment on this.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. With that, we'll move the other engineer in town. Council discussion approval to award the design contract for Tally Ho and Tandem Drives to J2 Engineering and Environmental Design for an amount up to $29,662.
Mayor and council, we did a hydraulic study for the area between Surrey and Carriage. to quantify what was going to be needed. As part of that study, they came up with a proposed channel section that would be put on the north side of Carriage and on the north side, no, excuse me, on the north side of Tally Ho and on the north side of Tandem, with driveway culverts underneath each of the driveways. What we are doing here is we are taking the next step in that and taking the same firm, awarding a design contract that will we'll come up with the design plans for the culvert and channel system, and also to design a road, a one-way crown road that will drain to it using a chip seal. So at the end of the day, we'll be ready to bid the work to get it constructed.
What's the estimate on the cost of the actual work?
We had in the budget for the construction, $260,000 for Tandem and Tally Ho both.
Okay.
And that's what's been budgeted. So recommend that we award J2 Engineering the contract to design the work.
Questions from council?
So how long is this gonna take before they actually start? We can let the contractor construct.
We're guessing that they will probably have a design ready to give to council or to present to council probably in about 3 months. And then we would, then you're looking at about 2 months to bid and award, and then construction would be towards the beginning of the year, beginning probably February of next year. We're still working out the schedule. We have to get an actual schedule from the consultant, but we're guessing about 3 months.
No further questions. There is public comment on this.
I have no one wishing to speak.
We're looking for a motion then.
I'll do it. Motion to approve award the design contract for Tally Ho and Tandem Drives to J2 Engineering and Environmental Design, Inc. for an amount of up to $29,662.
Second.
You have the motions?
Something folks have been waiting for, so let's get it done.
We have a couple of residents here who've been waiting for this to be fixed for a while. It's a tough one. Any people here who could be interested, look at where those roads are. Those are difficult situations to deal with, but hopefully we can help those folks.
There's roughly 100 feet of vertical relief and 900 feet. So it comes shooting down, the water comes shooting off of Black Mountain and down those.
Maybe that's where the rock came from.
Different location.
Other comments from other comments from council before we vote.
Sooner is better than later. I mean, this is something these guys have probably been waiting about 20 years. It'd be nice to get this taken care of.
We're trying to get it done this fiscal year. That's our goal.
This is financial, roll call vote, excuse me.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Councilmember Augerton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bunch,
Aye.
Councilmember Alcama,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ray,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. We're on to item number 9, presentation of traffic calming process for neighborhoods for future consideration by town council. This is discussion only.
Mayor, members of council, at one point, we've always had people come in and say, well, I want a speed hump. I want a speed bump. I want some sort of something in my neighborhood. And we don't have a policy that allows us to quantify and come up with a method for determining when it is necessary and when it is not necessary. So what we're going to, so this policy or procedure is how we can identify. I guess it would help if I had hit an extra F in traffic, but when I was putting together the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint, but when we were putting it together, we looked at several different policies that were out there, policies and procedures for traffic calming. And we chose one that is seems to be working well in Fountain Hills. So what this does is it identifies when there is a need, a procedure for following that need, and then a measurement for at what point the community can pay for it and at what point the town would pay for the procedure. So if you'll indulge me with a short PowerPoint. So like I said, annually, the town has many residents who inquire about the installation of traffic calming devices on public streets. The calming devices such as speed bumps, speed humps, and speed cushions were reviewed. We met with Jim Ford, with Tyler Thurman, and with Adam Stein. And we came up with the fact that we really only want to entertain speed cushions due to the wear and tear that it will cause on our emergency medical vehicles or our fire trucks. So this way, the spacing is something that can be done. And I'll give you an example of what it looks like in just a minute, but we can have it won't do as much damage to the emergency vehicles. The procedure looks at criteria that would both warrant the installation of the traffic calming devices, but also the establishing criteria for the public acceptance of the device in an area and the funding of the installation of the device. The purpose is to establish a fair criteria-based system for determination of where devices will be installed or installation will be considered. Sorry. So this is what a speed cushion looks like. You'll notice that there's a path between them, not in the traffic lanes where the fire truck can span. And since it has a larger wheelbase, it would span it, and the other ones would be slowed down by it. And then the detail that is normally associated with a speed cushion. This is hard to see, but this is actually a flow chart for the procedure, which basically starts with a call coming from a resident alerts the town to a speeding issue. Town deploys a manual mobile speed trailer. If the speed trailer shows that the 85th percentile speed is more than 5 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, then it goes through a procedure where we then install a tube system. The town doesn't currently have a tube system. We would purchase one for about $2,000. The reason for the tube system is it's a little more accurate. And also it doesn't let people try and see if they can beat their best record for speed that the display shows. So we're trying to come up with just a tube system that is a little more accurate, and then the procedure would follow through, yes, no. And if it's more than 5 miles an hour, but less than 12, then it's eligible for private funding. And if it's greater than 12 miles an hour over, then it would institute a town funded. Now, what we did do is we came in and we set an example. I prepared a sample analysis. We did some collection of traffic speeds out on Highland Road. And so the town received a complaint about excessive speed. We set the speed trailers out to collect data, and the collected data has been used to demonstrate how the procedure would be implemented. So here's the data. It was collected March 21st, April 6th. Posted speed there is 25 miles an hour. Average speed was 30.2 miles an hour, and the 85th percentile speed was 38 miles an hour. So we're 13 miles over the speed limit. And so therefore it would, if this were borne out by the tubes, then it would justify itself for a funded project. And so the project would move to the neighborhood petition stage. And what that is that the town staff and a neighborhood liaison would work together to establish where the device would be located, and also then what is the area that is affected by the residents that would be affected by that device? And so that then it would move on to the collection of the signature petitions, which we have set at 75% of those affected and 100% of those within 100 feet on either side of the where the device would be located. Again, these are recommendations for council's consideration for a future program should you wish to pursue it. So the sample affected area on Highland is that area. So the neighborhood liaison would be then collecting 75% of the signatures in order to go forward in the affirmative. The boundary of the effect is determined by the town engineer. It could be somebody else, but right now it's the town engineer is what we have in there. The neighborhood liaison and town staff will conduct review of possible device locations. Neighborhood liaison circulates petitions to the affected property owners. Petition has agreement to pay for share of neighborhood funded devices. So if it weren't 13 miles an hour, but it were say 10 miles an hour over, then the neighborhood, if they wanted to go forward, would put up the would pull together the resources and commit to paying for it. Must be supported by 75% of affected property owners and 100% of adjacent property owners. Property owners who do not respond to the petition are considered as against. 90 days to collect signatures and signatures verified and submitted to town council for approval of the device for both neighborhood and town funded projects. So ultimately it comes back to your decision on whether the device goes in. So that is a summary of this, a quick summary of what we've been looking at for coming up with a neighborhood traffic calming procedure for your consideration at a future council meeting. Any questions?
So how much does a speed cushion cost? And how often does it, what's the annual maintenance? How often does it have to be replaced?
Right now, the last check that I did, the last check that we have, and it's in the documentation, we're looking at probably about $5,500 to $6,000. Asphalt prices go up and down to install it. You have to do the painting of it. The only normal maintenance on it is the painting of the to let people know that it's there so that they don't become unaware and all of a sudden go launching. And then the other maintenance would be normal sign replacements because we warn people that they're there, and signs in Cape Creek tend to disappear at times. You know, they're in somebody's garage or just get shot out. And then the other one would be the replacement. We're probably looking at having to refresh it every 10 years or so.
Thank you.
Did you contact anybody in Fountain Hills to determine if this program works well for their thing?
This one is still a fairly new program. The date on their traffic calming policy, I think, was February of 22. The other provision that they do have in here is that should the neighborhood, after it's been put in, decide that they don't want it, it only takes a 51% petition to get it removed. So 75% to get it in, 51% to get it out. And that's after having been there for a minimum of 6 months.
Questions from this side of the table? Councilmember Bunch, do you have questions?
And what's the removal process on something like that?
Basically, you come back in and you mill it out, get the milling machine out and remove it.
It's not just scraping it back off. Okay.
Putting it back off. And, oh, by the way, the people that ask for it to be removed, pay for it to be removed.
Oh, okay.
That's a neighborhood cost. That's a cost that comes down to the another petition process, 51%, and they're agreeing to pay for the removal.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a number of questions.
Okay.
Mostly on qualifying criteria, traffic volumes less than 5,000 vehicles a day. Other than Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road, we don't have any vehicles that are more than 5,000, do we?
No, this is only for, this is only for a neighborhood. It also doesn't count for anything over 30 miles an hour speed, posted speed.
So nothing over 30. Schoolhouse and
Those are out.
Spur Cross, they're out.
No, they're out. These are,
Creek.
this is strictly a neighborhood, like when we had the 52nd
Yeah.
Street, 53rd Street issues. Those would qualify. Highland would qualify. Pretty much any of our neighborhood roads where we get reports. We've had some lately on New River Road and 52nd Street north of Carefree Highway that we've been looking, that we've had our speed trailers out for. And so those are the ones that we look at, but anything posted over 30 miles an hour would not qualify.
And it says here that the street shall have a vertical curb adjacent to the proposed device. So you've also got to put curbs in.
We have to put a curb in because otherwise what happens is people tend to go off on the shoulder to avoid it. So you have to direct them at the, and that's why I have it highlighted, because that's one point that we still have to discuss on, are there other methods other than a vertical curb, which doesn't really fit Cave Creek.
Yeah. And for the 85th percentile, at least 12 miles per hour above the posted speed for town cost participation, that makes a lot of sense because, when areas that we've had speeding, like on Cave Creek Road, have been 13 miles an hour above the posted limit.
Well, as you said, the Highland Road that I showed is posted at 25 and the average speed or the 85th percentile speed during the measurement period was 38.
Yeah. But the other one, the 85th percentile speed for the neighborhood funded device is only 5 miles an hour. I don't think the radar guns are accurate. They don't ticket people below 10 miles an hour. I see our marshal's not here. And I was going to ask him that question,
But it's 5 miles over. The 85th percentile speed is 5 miles over. But again, between 5 and 12 is neighborhood funded. So that means that the people who want it really have to want it to be able to agree to pay for it.
okay. And then Q. After all this, then the installation has to be approved by town council. Why is town council? We have all these criteria and all this stuff. Why isn't it just an administrative?
Again, that is something that could certainly change. I'm going with the method that Fountain Hills used, which was to take the final device to town council.
Oh, they do that?
They do this. This is almost verbatim out of the Fountain Hills. If something's
Stealing
working, that
everything
it's.
we can from them. So I like the fact you got the procedure.
I'd like to take credit for the thoroughness of this, but this has already been worked through by another agency and it seemed to fit us the best.
This is one of those policies where half the people are going to be mad and the other half are going to be, everybody's going
No,
to be
you
mad.
can't win. And so the idea is to make it difficult enough for it to be achieved, but it's achievable for the areas that need it.
So people who follow the law are going to have this crummy speed bump to go over.
Well, 75% of the neighborhood has to approve it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I especially like this. It says, as well as this neighborhood meeting has to have a uniformed police officer. I guess that is a good indication of how popular it's going to be.
Oh, yes, it's going to be very popular.
Maybe the National Guard might be more, okay.
No, that's only for certain portions of Cave Creek.
One
That's
last question. For instance, your example on Highland Road,
Yes.
which your example on Highland Road, and for full disclosure, I live on Highland Road and I have lived with speeding traffic all these years. But since it's so excessive, why wouldn't a stop sign be an alternative rather than just a calming device?
It could, but this, again, that's a different warrant. This is that people come in and say, we want something that will slow traffic. We want a speed bump. We get this all the time and we just don't have a policy. We don't, and so every other traffic calming policy that we're looking at is not so much about stop signs. It's about devices such as there are all sorts of alternatives that other people have used. They have where they move the road over, they put different types of treatments on the road. In this case, because of our fairly narrow right of ways, we're just looking at the speed cushion as the alternative that we would offer, and not go into a lot of esoteric things that might need design and then try and decide if that's going to cause a diversion that would cause people. I mean, I've seen where like in Colorado Springs, they put in a split road with a monument in the middle. But every now and then the monument in the middle is stacked with cars or motorcycles who decide to park at a rapid rate, come to a rapid deceleration in those areas. So I don't think we want that. So we're trying to keep it simple and do what we can do that won't also tear up our $1 million fire truck when we finally receive it.
Okay, there's no public comment on this one. It's just a discussion item. And what's the next step here?
The next step would be to get input from council on what we have written, and then to get your opinion on whether it should proceed to an agendized item for adoption.
Okay,
Are we supposed to do that like right now?
No,
Oh,
no, that's why it's just a presentation. And I'm sure that we will get the message back on whether you want to go forward or not go forward.
well, I'd like to get a sense of council right now.
that's what I mean.
Who's, Tom, let's start with you. What do you think of this?
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, Mr. Mayor. I made the mistake of bringing the issue up with David Phelps and found out that instead of a kindred spirit, he is a rabid activist for speed pillows or whatever the terminology is, sleeping policemen, things like that, which surprised me because Mr. Save the rabbits and make the trees greener and so forth. So it was something for me to ponder on because there are a number of people in the community who actually are impacted by traffic patterns and speeding and so forth. Then I became suspicious because I thought Hal was trying to get us to embrace these in the neighborhood so we would love them to death in the commercial corridor, the large speed tables. If you like the little ones, he's got some big ones he'd like to roll out.
Yeah,
like North
no,
Korea.
this is totally
I
separate
know it's all
from
coincidental,
my
or
other
not
ones.
related.
Yes.
But I just, I don't represent anything other than one older person who remembers how things used to be. It just seems ironic in a cowboy town where we still trailer horses back and forth every single day, that we're dealing with people who have HOA withdrawal and they want to tell their neighbors how to live. I really think that, and the mayor's brought this issue up before, that if we had a credible program with the sheriff's office for speed enforcement, that it would not only have to be in the commercial corridor, but it might be opportunities for everybody who obeys the law is now being victimized by the few that don't, which I understand is part of living in a society of law and order. But God, I hate to see that happen, and especially with curbing. If you want to see curbing that's vertical and horrible, Starbucks in the town of Cave Creek, that street there, doesn't have ribbon curves. It's got the vertical curves and concrete sidewalks. So I'm just the outlier, I'm sure. But I wish that we could have a credible speed enforcement program in town. Everybody knows which streets you can speed on and which ones people do speed on, and people take advantage of that. I just think this is more urbanization. It's more MAG will give you money if you do this, and it may be the only course of action, because when you talk to engineers, you find out that the days of yesteryear and the horse-drawn wagon we used to have and the hitching post we used to have downtown, that stuff's gone because the amount of people that we have here is so great.
Your horse won't hit 35 miles an hour.
Well, I think we should have horse-mounted speed enforcement, but that's another issue. And Mr. Mayor, I don't
Not
have to
consistent.
offer any constructive value. I talked to a constituent and found out that I was maybe in the minority, so I'm receding from anything other than a lament for the little cowboy town.
So in our subdivision, we voted, we're gonna resurface all of the streets. And we have the cash to do it. We want to do it right. We don't want to do it too many times. So the concern always was old folks walking around with their puppies and people going too fast. So the HOA board decided that we would buy some rubber speed bumps and install them for 6 months. And then take another vote. And so we did that. And people figured out how to go around them and over them and to the side of them. And then we took our second vote, and those are now for sale, Al. And we could make you a really great deal.
Yeah, but those are speed bumps and they would not fit our
They're
Mr.
not
Ford would
pushy
be
enough.
Mr. Ford would be after me if we had that type of installation.
Anyway, half loved them, half always won't.
There's a process here, and as you go through the process, we'll get input from the citizens. Those are the people that should be speaking, people who live on Highland and other such towns. You know, once it's installed in Highland, then citizens may have more information. But let's go through the process.
I think this is democracy in action. It's affecting neighborhoods, individual neighborhoods, and you have a high bar for the neighbors to approve it. So their voice matters, it counts, it's imperative. So I don't see it as some governmental oversight that we're forcing down their throats in any way, shape, or form.
You got to remember that the neighborhood liaison is the person collecting the signatures. It's not the town.
And good luck finding that person. But you know, it's a big responsibility and it's never easy to knock on doors. But it's worth it. And I for one would be in favor of it. The person I live with hates them. So, you know, you'll get a 50-50 vote out of my house.
Councilmember Bunch, your comments.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. You know, we got maintaining speed control through law enforcement with 90 some odd miles of paved roads in town is a challenge. You know, with 75% of the neighborhood having to approve it and under the right conditions having to pay for it, and then 51% to remove it. You know, I think once again that's letting the people decide for their own neighborhood. I don't much like the idea. Nobody's going to get me to sign up for one, but I think they should have the opportunity to see where they're at and the neighborhoods to figure out if they actually want to do that or not.
I pull horse trailers. And anytime you have something like that, it's just another annoyance. So if somebody wants that in their neighborhood, God love them. I don't want it anywhere near mine.
And you would be one of the people saying no, and they'd have to get, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm, you can probably talk to the other part of my household who would probably vote in favor of it. So.
So how does that work out? Does each member of a household have to be
Pretty sure I'd be outvoted 1-to-1, but.
One vote per property. One vote per property. Yes.
oh gosh, well, let's can we start a divorce court in town and make money off of that?
Well, I go to a lot of these meetings at MAG and other places, and every town, the government, and the feds are forcing it to their money. The MAG, everything is making driving more inconvenient. That is the name of the game. It's like it's universal out there, and I hate to see it. I would not, like everyone else, I would not vote to put in my neighborhood. I'd be a no vote. But I like the fact that people have an option. It's a high bar. It's democracy in action. And it's a criteria-based system. It's not hey, let's make every decision a custom decision. We have other work we need to be doing on roads and streets besides this stuff. And I certainly agree with the enforcement part. We're still not, we've ramped up a lot. We've got more to go. So
I have one last comment.
Yeah,
I
good.
think that this is really an example of our town responding to our community members. Because I do remember what happened on 52nd Street, and it took a long time to get anything resolved there. And now we're finally acting, at least as a group, to, you know, help resolve these issues. And hopefully we'll get the right answer.
Yeah, and it's criteria-based system that the neighborhood would decide, each neighborhood would decide for themselves.
Whatever neighborhood brought it forward, it certainly doesn't even cover the whole town.
Other comments?
I have a different question for the town manager. I forgot to ask. What happened to the stop sign that used to be at the schoolhouse and Cave Creek Road?
Yeah, I was informed this morning that it met with demise over the weekend. So we are in the process of getting it fixed. It's not just because it's not a normal stop sign. It's the one with the solar and the lights and everything else. We've taken it down to get a new pole with the parts seated onto it. So we're hopefully going to have it back the end of the week or beginning of next week.
Which side is that on?
I'm not sure which one.
It's on the east side of Cave Creek Road
Oh.
in the center there.
Yeah, the center
Great
one
big
that,
pole.
The center one.
yeah, it's the one that usually we've had it hit by horse trailers before where they don't quite make the turn.
Mm.
And all of a sudden they leave, they're back. It happened about 4 or 5 months ago. We had a horse trailer that made the turn a little bit sharp and took out the one that's right there in the median. So it could be the same one meeting with the same problem.
I believe it is.
Okay, well, we have finished the agenda in about 3 hours, 4 hours if we were for the executive session. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting
Aye. Good night, all.
adjourned.